Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like a low point. Like, especially after like my first three collegiate seasons, I was like, will I ever be able to return to the level I was at? And just I'd love to be remembered for kind of like the motivational aspect of watching somebody do so poorly and for them to get back up and keep going. Like, I love the impact that I've had on the sport. That I've heard from other people have told me, and I think that would be like the greatest thing to be known for, is like as an amazing story that will motivate others to continue to succeed forever.
This episode was recorded in the spring of 2023.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Denting. I'm your host Fernando Andrade, and today I have a very special guest here with me. Very excited to talk about your journey, your sport, and everything in between. Skyler Magula, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
All good. Excited about this. We were just talking right now and already was spilling some topics, so excited to get this started. There's many things that caught my attention, and I have to confess from the beginning that as soon as I ran into your videos and just like your entire account, I was like very interested just to even have a conversation with you. I was like, I don't know what it is, but I'm interested in having a conversation with you. So thank you for accepting the invitation and being here.
Of course, yeah. It's an honor to be on this show. Like, I see all your stuff all the time, and it's inspiring, and I love what you're doing for Cal Athletics and for yourself as well.
Thank you. The first thing from the get-go that just caught my eye: work until you no longer have to introduce yourself. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, you look at the icons of sport, and like Michael Jordan, and a lot of like football legends. It's like they walk in, they know who that is, and especially at their competitors, they see them and they're like, all right, this is somebody that I already know who it is. I've been watching them play. I got to compete with this guy. I got to get to that level, and it's all about trying to get to that level.
That, to a certain extent, depends on your opponent and how they feel about you and how they interpret either your performance, your attitude, your mentality, etc. Do you feel in a way that you're handing them over the control in a way by having that mentality towards them?
I mean, as long as I create a self-image and I try to portray that really well, it's like, they all have an idea of me, and it's the exact idea that I want them to have of me.
Interesting. Yeah, I was talking about this with a friend when we played soccer, especially younger. There was this one specific team, and as soon as they stepped on the field to warm up, you just knew.
Exactly.
And it was definitely a scary feeling. And I'm sure we've had that with opponents, but we even never find out. We're just like doing our own thing, and we don't think about it as much. And when we've talked to these kids, because we ended up playing with a few of them at Cal, and they were like, yeah, we wouldn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Is it something you're conscious of, or you just try and work towards that and hopefully achieve it without noticing it?
Yeah, it's subconscious. It's like I want to be an icon of the sport, and I want to do really well, and so it's about working to get to that point.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me, especially like having that mentality, because to us, we're directly competing against another soccer team, and we're physically battling against them, right? Same as basketball or football, as you mentioned. But with pole vault, is there any intimidation game going on or mentality tricks there?
Yeah, there's a little bit, especially when you're in the same competition as them, or you're going to be in the same competition as them. Like, it's they come in at a different height than you. How much they make the bar by. If they have any misses or anything like that, and so there is that competitive aspect definitely when you're in the same competition. But I mean, even if you're not, it's like, you're comparing your world ranking, because your exact marks can be compared as opposed to like a team sport. It's like you can't compare what you scored against one team to another. Especially if that other team that you beat had beaten the other team, doesn't always mean you're going to beat them. But like with track and field, it's like it's performance based. It's on that mark, and it's easy to compare. And so if somebody else in the NCAA all the way on the other side of the state is putting up big marks, you're competing with them even though you're not at the same meet.
Yeah, it's a very interesting numbers game, especially, and we were just talking about Olympic sports before we started recording, and that's something that fascinates me because it's so objective to a certain extent, whereas for us it's very subjective.
Yeah.
And it's something that definitely that I really enjoy a lot here on the podcast is talking with people that compete in these objective sports because I feel like there's a different approach and mentality towards these things, whereas with us there's obviously some subjectiveness and how do you have chemistry with your teammates and things like that and just like compete to win the game.
Exactly.
Whereas for you guys, it's a number on your mind and you know your opponent's numbers and trying to get there and competing with somebody in the other side of the country like you were mentioning is super interesting to me as well. How much attention do you pay to your opponent's numbers? Like, is it something you keep up with on a weekly basis?
I mean, so in indoors, you kind of have to because to go to indoor nationals, it's the top 16 in the NCAA, you know, and like there's no additional people get to go. It's just that exact amount. So you have to be aware, like, what's top 16? What do I have to jump to be there? And so, you know, if some other people end up jumping higher that weren't expected to jump higher, then that mark goes up, and you have to adjust and, you know, readjust the goal to try and get there.
Wait, so for indoor international competition?
Indoor NCAA championship.
NCAA championship. Okay, I for some reason thought you said international. I'm like,
No.
wait, how is that connected? Okay, so for championships, it's only the top 16 that go through.
Yeah,
so that's why you
for
pay attention.
indoor.
Yeah,
so
for
indoor and outdoor are different.
Yes, especially because I'm familiar with the running aspect or the sprinting aspect and how it's a bit shorter. What's the main difference with indoor and outdoor for pole vault?
Like for us, it's like we have the same season length where it's pretty short. Like we have like 3 meets to qualify, and then that if you make it to the nationals, that's going to be your 4th meet, and then it's basically over. It starts in January and ends in, you know, I think early March.
But besides the length of the season, it's not something that affects you, like being outdoors or something like that.
Being indoors, obviously, like wind is a big aspect. Like obviously in running, wind plays a factor because it'll mess with your time, and you know if it's not a wind legal time, then it doesn't count. But for pole vaulting, that there is no wind measurement gauge like they do in long jump and a lot of the sprinting events. So like I could have a giant tailwind, you know, at my back, blowing like 20 miles an hour, and it's still fully legal to jump. But in the same way, you could have a nasty headwind or crosswind and you don't have to deal with that inside, you know. And the weather, you know, it's obviously the same because you're inside, and it's like usually it's a nice temperature, you know.
Because your outdoor meets, they don't get rained out, right?
Well, they do occasionally. Like we had our Cal opener got rained out. I wasn't planning on jumping, but it did get rained out, and especially rain. Rain will most likely cancel pole vault a lot of the times too, especially if there's lightning because of the poles.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I feel like to understand your entire story and where you are today, starting off at your childhood would be a good idea. I do this with mostly every guest, but specifically with you within the sport of pole vaulting, from what I read and even what you already mentioned, right, that your dad was a coach. I saw that your brother is also competing in pole vaulting. So before we even dive into the sport, what was your childhood like? If I had to talk with your brother or your dad or your mother, what would they tell me about you as a kid?
Definitely, yeah. So like my dad's been coaching pole vault for 30 plus years, and when I grew up, you know, I was exposed to the sport, but I was never forced into it. You know, so I'd always hang out around at the track, and then it got to the point where I would every Saturday for Saturday practice, I would beg and plead to go out there because I loved doing it. I loved hanging out there, you know, and being out there with pole vaulters and, you know, messing around pole vaulting and other, you know, dumb stuff that we do. But like I'd always loved the sport since I was young, and that continued on into middle school. I played football for a little bit, but then in middle school I started taking it like really seriously.
Up until middle school.
Like in like the start of my 8th grade year was like that's when I was like practicing multiple times a week.
Okay, start of 8th grade, and that makes a lot of sense. You're actually like outside of Cal, right? But like having a serious conversation with, you're the second pole vaulter I've ever really met, and I talk about this again a lot here on the podcast because my sport being soccer, especially in California. You look left and right, and there's something going on.
Yeah.
But not even there, like worldwide, it's just a humongous sport. Like anywhere you go, there's going to be something with soccer. And there's other sports that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
Was that an issue with you getting into the sport? Obviously, I know your dad is coaching, so you're obviously exposed to it.
Yeah.
But in the sense of messing around with other pole vaulters and things like that, were they your age, or was it just a group of different ages?
Yeah. So when I was younger and I used to compete, I'd go to these all-comers meets, and I would compete in the girls section against like high school freshman girls when I was like, in elementary school and middle school, like the few times I would compete. So like it's definitely different, like especially in California, because I went to Texas for Texas Relays, and I talked to people there, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm a 7th grader, I've been pole vaulting for 4 years, and they have pole vaulting at their middle school.
Wow.
Yeah, which we didn't have in California, and we didn't have pole vaulting until high school, so it was like, when I got to my year before high school, I was like, I want to pole vault in high school, I might as well get a jump start on it by training now.
How was that experience for you competing against girls? Because I have my own fair share with that, and there's something in soccer that's similar to that, but the age difference, and especially at those ages, plays a role. So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I mean, like, I was super young, so like every time I would get in line, and when I was warming up to compete, like all the girls would be like, oh, he's he's so small, he's so cute, and like all that stuff. So I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Yeah. And then like I never really looked at that aspect of gender that deeply. It was just like, I'm just competing against people that I have similar skill to, and especially because there's a big crossover when a guy is first starting and a girl is a couple months ahead there, where they'll be at the same level unless they're older, and especially because a lot of girls will develop sooner. Like my dad coached a girl in 8th grade that jumped higher than I did my freshman year of high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does play a role, and I was bringing that up because you're the first person I've heard that from a different sport. In soccer, there's this common thing where an older national team on the women's side will compete against a younger male team. Not necessarily national team because of the ages, it's just different at that point, and the skill level is just like a bit quicker with the national team. But for example, when I must have been U15, something like that. When we were 15 years old, we competed against the under 23 women's national team. Wow. And physically, like at first you're like, all right, especially because there's contact, right? First you're like respectful and stuff.
Exactly.
And then a girl just comes and knocks you, and it's like, all right, game on, right?
Yeah.
But I see it now, and we have friends here from Cal on the women's soccer team, and they're on the U23 national team and going to the World Cup and things like that. And it makes sense, like, to have that competition, and I think it's a very unique age in which it's really cool for them to get that practice in. It's really cool for us being younger to get that practice in, and it's something I wish would be explored more in different sports. I think it's really healthy.
Definitely, yeah.
With what you were mentioning about being exposed to the sport and starting off until 8th grade, what was a switch for you in 8th grade that made you take things more seriously?
Yeah, I think it was, I'd finished my 7th grade football season, and my brother was going into his freshman year, or was a freshman already, and he had broke his leg that off-season training playing football. I was like, I don't really like that, because I was there when he broke his leg, and I was like, that's pretty scary. I was like, well, I'm gonna go to high school anyways, and I'm gonna be able to pole vault, because it's that's what my brother was gonna do, and what we've always wanted to do when we got to high school. So I was like, oh, I asked my dad if I could come out and train with the high school team when I was in middle school, and he's like, yeah, sure. Just gotta get dropped off here. And so it was 3 days a week directly after school in 8th grade. I would go straight out to the track at my high school, and I would train with my dad and all the high school kids.
So I didn't realize this. Your brother is older than you.
Yeah.
Is it just the two of you?
My sister does it now. One of my other sisters, she tried it for a little bit. It wasn't her forte, but yeah, it's bigger than just my siblings. My uncles did it as well, and like so it's on both sides of my family a little bit. Yeah.
So it's an entire complete family of pole vaulters. Do you know how that started?
Yeah, it started with my dad and his brother. They were playing football, and I went to the same high school as my dad as well.
Marina,
So,
right?
Yeah, yeah. So my dad was playing football, and the coach at the time, when you go into off season, like nowadays when you're going off season, you just go into off season training with that sport. But before, if you wanted to keep doing sports and train, you had to go do a different sport. So he got all like his football guys, and he's like, okay, we're gonna go do track and field during the off season, so that way we can work on speed and everything like that. And then he's like, I want you guys to come do pole vault, and he didn't really know a whole lot about coaching pole, but my dad and his brother, they got into it and they were jumping, and all of his buddies started doing it. And so my dad, played football, wrestled, and then pole vaulted all throughout his last couple years of high school. And then, he went and learned. He went to a couple camps and learned how to coach pole vaulting and learned a little bit more about how to do it. And so he helped coach his buddies, and he ended up doing all right, and he enjoyed the sport and being around it. And so ever since then, he's been coaching.
And he was a coach still today at Marina?
Yeah.
Okay, very nice. Very interesting how it all comes together. How was the progress like from 8th grade to committing to Cal? Like, take me through those years in high school and what happened for you.
Yeah, 8th grade, I didn't compete very much, but I did a lot of training. And, of course, with training, you get to see where you're at, performance-wise. And then my freshman year of high school, my dad also has a club team, and so I would train with his club as well and help work and all that stuff. And there's a group called Vaulter Magazine who posts a lot of pole vault stuff on Instagram and stuff like that. And it's owned by this guy Doug Baum, and he's super nice. And he created this club series where it was a bunch of clubs in the Southern California area. They would all meet up, and it would be a pole vault only meet. Wow. And there's never been anything like this. And so, I remember I went out to that first meet, and it's all this big deal. Like, there's a bunch of these people, and a bunch of people my age, and I was like, oh, this is really surprising. And even people younger, and it's like, well, this is like what I've been looking for my whole life, like people to compete against. Finally, I've been alone, so I just assume I'm like really good, And I show up to this meet, and there's a guy who's the same age as me, and we jump, and I open at 7 feet was the opening bar. I open at that. I put a bunch of height on it, and I just keep hitting it on the backside. I just, I was completely choking in the moment, and I ended up no heighting. And I still remember that day. I was so pissed off and sad. I was like, I've been training for so long, and I'm so good at the sport. Why couldn't I make even 7 feet? And so then we came back. We had another meet the next weekend. And I think I ended up jumping 7 feet or something like that, and then 7.6, and then 8 feet, and then it was just we had a meet every other weekend or something like that, and I just kept progressing up to I think it was about 9 feet or 9.6, and then the high school season started, and I PR'd, and I ended up jumping 10 feet or something like that my first high school meet, and then I continued on throughout that whole season, jumping 10 and 10.6 and never getting to 11 feet. It was super frustrating, and never being able to make it. And I still remember there was a meet where it was the third meet in a row where I'd made 10.6 and I just missed 11 feet. And I was like, I'm horrible at this sport. I'm never going to be able to do anything with it, which sucked because I had such a passion for it. And it really hurt me because I was like, I really want to do this. I really love doing this. And, there was other people that my dad had trained in high school that, their first year they had jumped 12 feet, or he had girls that had jumped, similar height their first year, and I couldn't even jump it. And then I went to a meet over the summer, and I ended up jumping, actually it was towards the end of the season, it was a championship meet. I jumped 11 feet for the first time. I touched it a bunch, and so it was wobbling, and you made it, but you're like, oh, does it really count? I didn't really, I didn't get over it clean. And then I went to a meet that summer and ended up, jumping 11.5. But at the time, I was small still. I was 5'6" or something like that. And that's basically my whole first year. Do you want me to continue throughout the rest of high school?
Yeah. I mean, if you'd like to, I think there's a lot to unpack there just from the start. 2 things that I really like that you said. The first one that was going through my head is, you show up and for the first time there's plenty of pole vultures there, and I think that's really healthy in the sense that it's always good to find a community in whatever it is you're doing, because it's not only used as competition, as we'll talk about in a bit, but also as having a training partner or having a friend that's also doing it and it motivating you. Because if you're the only one in your sport, I mean, it's
you're the
hard.
Best.
Well, yeah, one, you're the best, but two, it's like finding not motivation, but like it could be very lonely is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like even this process for me of like I compare a lot of things to life and anything we can do in life. I think sports are a full-on metaphor for life. Like we can compare it to anything. And if you look at starting a project, for example, like the only thing that keeps me from not being lonely in this is that I'm talking to somebody, but I don't know anybody else that does it. I know a lot of big names that do it, but I don't directly know them. The majority of the time I'm like by myself setting this up or like editing or something, and it's like a very lonely process until you find friends that are doing it. And exactly like you said, like to give it some competition, if you're the only one doing it, it's both good and bad in whatever it is, right? But like if you're the only one doing, let's say you're starting up a business and you're the only one for now, it's good that you started it, but until you have competition, you're not going to improve. Because I'm sure at the time you thought you were the best, like you mentioned, but you were like struggling to reach 7 feet.
Yeah.
If you didn't have competition, would you have improved? Probably not.
Yeah, exactly. And it would have been much until the high school season would have been like my first loss, and then it was like I would have realized that I needed to, get better, and then I would have been, a whole year behind kind of thing.
It's almost sad to me how some people get frustrated or annoyed at competition when they don't realize that if they don't have it, they're really not going to improve. Like in anything it is in life, especially in sports for us is normal at this point. Right. But if you have a competition in, let's say, a group project in school or in a startup in business or in an essay, whatever the case may be, that's good. Yeah. You want there to be competition because of the competition, you're improving, whether you notice it or not. So that's super interesting that you mentioned that, because I was going to start off with, he found a community in it that's really healthy, that's good. But then you said, I thought I was the best. Yeah. And clearly, I mean, you improved because of it.
Oh, yeah.
But that's awesome. And you reach, as you were saying, was it 12 feet?
Or was it like 11.5?
11.5.
Yeah.
You reached that. A quick side note into there as well. You struggled for a bit to break that, right? To PR there. We're again going to talk about this a bit later, but with that first experience of struggling to PR or it being long, what kept you going? Because you mentioned your passion and questioning yourself at that point. What kept you going, and what was it about the passion, or where did it come from that made you be patient at that age? Yeah,
like a lot of it came from I knew what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to pole vault, and I wanted to be good at it, of course, and so I continued to just train hard. I knew that if I just trained harder, if I worked harder, that I could accomplish this, because I'm short, I'm slow, I'm weak, and like if I get a little bit taller and I get a little bit faster, like I can definitely jump higher, And I was like 5'6" my first year of high school, so like I was really small, and I was incredibly scrawny. Like I'll show you a picture after. Like you look at it and you're like, wow, it's the guy's same head just on like a kid's body.
I was also 5'6", but I think we turned out a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But how did that growth spurt affect you? Like, because I'll be honest, like very different. Like you said, I mean, you're much taller than me, but at a certain age, especially like around 10, and I've told this story before. When I was around 10, it was not even 10, it must have been 12, 13, but it's like an age where like kids start to grow. Yeah. And very drastically too. Like whether they keep growing or not, that's a different story. But at the moment, you're like, I don't know, I must have been like 5'2", 5'3", and some kids are 5'9", and then they're 5'10", 5'11", and then there's a kid that's 6 feet tall. I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Exactly.
And you feel like you can't compete at all.
Oh yeah.
Like at all.
Yeah.
And at least for me, that inspired me to start training extra. My dad just looks me in the eyes and goes like, look, there's no way at all that you're going to be able to compete with these kids unless you start doing extra and like hit the gym and things like that. did you have that realization as well, pretty much?
Yeah, like I remember at middle school, like I was shorter than a lot of people, and because I'm young for my grade as well.
When's your birthday?
It's in August.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes
So
sense.
I was like, I graduated high school at 17, and then like the summer before college, I turned 18. And so like, I was already young. And so I always thought I was like a late bloomer kind of kid. And I was like, oh, like I'm just like a late bloomer because my mom's 6 feet tall, and my dad is 6'1". So I was like, okay, there's a good likeliness that I'll be pretty tall. But then my brother was taller than me. Even when I met the same age as him, he was always taller than me. And so it was like, I was like, okay, like my brother's getting pretty tall. I'm not really getting tall. I'm like, what is going on with this? And like I remember like you were saying, like in middle school, like all these kids were like so much taller than me, and it was like it felt like unfair. And so like that's when I was like, I knew that if I just worked harder than them, that I could definitely beat them.
Yeah, it's an important life lesson at that point, and again to use that comparison, because many people, I have friends that find these excuses, whether it was when we were 10 or in high school or even today.
Oh yeah.
I'm not strong enough, I'm not tall enough, I'm not this, I'm not that. And that's just like, oh, it's game over.
Yeah.
Or you can just say like, look, find your strength in it and push to it. I'm not going to say that if you would have stayed at 5'6", you would have been where you are today.
Yeah, that is the glory of pole vault, is that it doesn't discriminate on height. Like we've had a world record holder that was like 5'8", and we've had one that's 6 foot, and we've had guys that are like 6'5", jump really high too. So it's like it goes across all beings. And I remember when I was shorter and slower, I was like, okay, well, what is one thing I can do better than other people? I could be more technical. If I can be more efficient with my energy, then I'll be able to beat them, and I won't have to be as strong or fast as them. And so like that was my biggest emphasis all throughout high school, was being technically better and more efficient.
I think it's an important play with words as well, especially with what you're mentioning, because a lot of people view any of these things as a weakness, where it's not necessarily a weakness, it's just a lack of strength. And I think the wording just makes a huge difference. If you can say, my strength is not here, rather than a weakness, it makes you think about, well, where is my strength? And let me double down on there instead of trying to improve on where I don't have much. So let's say I don't have the height or the strength or the speed, whatever it may be in anything you're doing in life, but I have the intelligence and the specific form. Focus on that, double down on that. And like not nobody, but like most people aren't good at everything.
Exactly.
You can find whatever you're good at and be better at that specific thing than everybody else, and it's just going to set you apart.
Definitely, yeah.
So what was after that struggle? What came after that?
Yeah, it came a lot of training that summer. I pole vaulted a bunch, and when I say training, I don't mean weight room, I don't mean sprints, I mean pole vaulting. Like when I would train pole vaulting, that's all I would do. It's about taking tons of jumps, because at that young of age, like you're just learning the sport. And I think I had done a little bit of training with running and not lifting yet, but I had done some plyometric work, because I knew that it would pay off, as well as like gymnastic-esque exercises on a bar or rings to build air awareness and core strength and stuff like that. And so I pole vaulted a bunch over that summer, and then it led into another one of those. Did it? I think so. Yeah, those club seasons, and that was like my first like breakout season, because I showed up to that first meet and I jumped 12 feet. I was like, perfect. I've already increased 7 inches. Like at this rate, I'm gonna jump super high. And then, and then it was every week, and then that's when I started first posting videos online on social media. It was me, my first PR at 12 feet, and then 12.6 and stuff like that. Yeah.
Wait, what year was this then?
This was my sophomore year of high school.
Wow.
Yeah. So
you've been posting for this long?
Yeah, they're still on. Like my first video was when I jumped 11.5.
No way.
If you scroll all the way back, and so like technique is way different, and it's just it's comical,
So I have scrolled. You're talking about Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Because I've seen you on other social medias as well. Like when I was looking you up, and that's crazy that it's that far back, because I did scroll, but I didn't realize.
Yeah.
It was sophomore year of high school. Wow.
Yeah.
Your posting is something I'll definitely get into in a bit, but you didn't post as much back then, did you?
No, I only posted when I PR'd, whenever I jumped higher, and it worked because I kept jumping higher like every week, and going into like that season, like I had jumped like 12.7 or something like that. And so like my first high school meet, I ended up, I think I PR'd, I jumped like 13 and 13.6. And so like I was like, okay, I get to post pretty regularly if I'm just posting my PRs. And like I went to like an indoor meet called the Pole Vault Summit, which I'll touch on later because this is a huge meet. Like
Okay.
like it's huge for pole vault community. It's like I jumped like 12.11 or something there, and then I opened my first outdoor meet for high school, and I jumped 13.6, and then 13.6 again, and then it was like I got to jump 14 feet. And then I go to this meet that was in like the Laguna Hills area in SoCal, where for this meet they don't have a pole vault pit at this high school, but they host this giant meet. So what my dad did was we packed up our pit in a raised runway, and we would bring it down to that meet, and we'd run the pole vault section to create opportunities. And so like that involved like packing up a pit into a giant U-Haul truck and a runway, with tiny scrawny me. Like I had gotten to like 5'10" by then. So like I had grown a lot, and I was like, I had to like work hard back then because the stuff was heavy. And we would load it up, take it there, unload it, and we would leave late, and then we would show up to the meet like right in the beginning, right in the early morning, because we had to run everything throughout the whole day, and then our sections would be at the very end of the day, and we would jump. And so it was like, this is what we all came here to do, is what we all set up to do. And I jumped in the frost off section, and I ended up being like really close to like losing to this guy. I think he might have been ahead of me on attempts or something like that, and then the bar goes up to 14 feet, and I get over it, and I just skim it with my chin, and I land in the pit, and I'm just like, oh my God, like I just jumped 14 feet. Like, this is insane. I was ecstatic, and it was just like an amazing feeling. But also that year was my first year I ever experienced an injury as well. I had a hip flexor issue, which made me miss like some of the biggest meets, like Mount Sac Relay is a meet I just went to. They had a high school section, and that was the first time I qualified for that. And then Arcadia Invitational, which is a huge high school meet in California, that I ended up having to miss out on that too. I remember just like not being able to go because I was fully hurt, and so I took like 3 weeks off of pole vaulting, and I was doing no training. And then I showed up to the Orange County Championship and ended up like just winning that at like 13.7 or something like that after that. And then it led into the postseason in Southern California, which is, I think, is one of the most difficult postseasons that like any sport I've ever heard of. Because so what you have to do is you have to hit an at-large mark at your league finals or win at your league finals. Then you have to go to what they call CIF prelims. There they take like the top X number amount of people to go to CIF finals, and this is all based off of division. So like whatever division your school is in, and so then of the people who win their CIF finals for their division, then they take the top X marks, top X people, and they go to CIF Masters. And then at that meet, you get the chance to make the at-large qualifier for the state meet, or they take the top 6. And so usually, more than 6 people would qualify, and all of those people would go to the state meet. Where at the state meet, you have to jump, jump top 12 in the state like the state prelims, then to show up the very next day and compete in the state final, which is like competing one day after the other in pole vault is like unheard of. Like nowhere else has it ever happened besides like the CIF state meet in California.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot to unpack there again. And first off, where we ended, at any age, it's not common to compete back-to-back days. Like when you were in middle school or early high school.
Yeah.
No, you can't do it.
It's just not like a common thing. Like track and field, like, especially the pole vault competition, like some pole vault competitions will be 2 hours of, waiting and jumping and stuff like that. And it's just super taxing on the body. So like especially now in college, like there's no way I could jump 2 days in a row. Like I could do it if it was for a championship, but like I would not be high quality the second day,
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. There's an age for us where we can no longer play soccer back-to-back days. Like, I think, when's the last time I played soccer back-to-back days? It must have been sophomore year of high school, and even that was late. But it was like, all right, we can do it.
Yeah.
Are we fit enough to do it? until a certain age. And I'm
Definitely.
sure like there's definitely players in college that can do it, but it's not healthy at all. Like we play Thursday, Sunday, and
Yeah.
that's even crazy on the body. Like we have a midfielder that runs about a half marathon every game, and
Yeah.
he plays 90 minutes like both games, so 180 minutes
That's
a
ridiculous.
marathon between Thursday and Sunday, and it's like, and that's every week,
Yeah.
which is crazy like on the body. But I didn't realize, again, it's pardon my ignorance, but
No,
it's
no, it's
like
fine.
certain sports where I just don't realize how crazy it is on the body. My only experience with track was freshman year of high school. I ran the 3200,
Oh,
and yeah,
yeah, that's no fun.
for me it was.
Yeah.
And but point being, I know what it's like to wait the entire day for the event and
Yeah.
to be there. I don't know, the meet started at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. and then it's
Exactly.
like, all right, I don't compete until 6 p.m. or something. And
Yeah.
you're just waiting around. And I think it's a really cool environment. I honestly think it's
Definitely.
underrated compared to
Oh,
other
yeah.
sports. I think it's a great social aspect of the sport.
Yeah, definitely.
But you not being able to compete back to back days and then describing that CIF and how it's
Oh,
the
yeah.
best and then of the best of the best of the
Yeah,
best.
so you have to perform multiple weeks in a row and be on top of your game. And I remember that year, I decided I'd compete varsity at league. That way I would have the chance. I made the at-large mark to go to CIF prelims. And at CIF prelims, I jumped 14 feet again and tied my PR. And I think I was like I was like 1 or 2 spots below going to CIF finals. And I was heartbroken because 14 feet had made it, not like I think the year before, but also the following following 2 years of my high school career, 14 feet made it, and less than 14 feet made it. And like even to this day, like 14 feet, if you jump 14 feet at the meet, you'll go to the next meet, you know? So like that was like another like heartbreaking moment. It was like a setback. I was like, okay, you're not as good as you thought you were. Time to reset and get back into this, you know? And especially that, because it's like that's your last meet. You know, it's just whatever meet you don't, reach the next level that's your last meet.
With when you show up to something and you see a height to qualify that you've never hit before, what do you feel like? Like, is there, obviously you're going to be nervous, I'm assuming, but is it scary or what thought goes into that?
I mean, yeah, back in high school, it was definitely like I was like, especially when it comes to that meet, it's like you don't know what the height's going to be until everybody jumps it in that competition, because everybody could have done really bad, and then you take the top X amount of guys, and if everybody did bad and then you had a good day, then it's like you get to go off of like a lower mark. So it's not so much about the mark in those meets, it's more of just about competing against everybody else and having a clean slate, like a clean board, making bars on first attempts, because if you make it on a third attempt, you get ranked lower than somebody else, even if you clear the same bar.
Interesting.
Yeah, like so I'll kind of break down that whole like scoring part, because it can be really confusing. So like everybody I talk to, it's so everybody comes in a bar, and if you miss a bar, like you're one position below the person who made it on their first try or their second try, and you only get 3 tries at every bar, and you can also skip bars, like to pass and stuff like that, and then at the end of the meet, like every scoring organization is kind of different, but I think in college they go from your current bar, that like the last bar you both made. So if you both tied and made the last bar in your first attempts, it goes to your total amount of misses. And so if you opened lower and you had a bunch of misses at some other bar, but then you were like cleaner through, and then the previous bar the guy had 1 miss, he would still beat you because he only had 1 miss and you had way more misses.
Wow.
Yeah. And so like coming into that as like you have to be perfect on the exact bars and every bar to really increase your chances. And so it's a competitive kind of thing.
I did not know that. So it's not even about reaching a certain height, but how you do it and then
Yeah.
how many reps you do it. Wow,
Yeah.
very, very interesting.
Yeah, because I think if I made 14 feet on my first try, I think I would have gone to the next meet, and I think I made it on my third. And so it was like it just took a blow to my like consistency level and level of play. And I was like, okay, it's my second year, and I wanted to go much further, because there was a guy on my team named Jet, and he had jumped 12 feet his freshman year and 15 feet his sophomore year. So like I was like, okay, I'm a foot behind, and he was still in high school my freshman year, and he jumped 17 feet and broke the school record, and I think he got close to the Orange County record and stuff like that. So like I had this guy that I was like okay, I had my sights on. I needed to match his marks previously in order to get to that current level that he's at.
And it's important to have that North Star in a way, and to say whenever you get down, it's like, well, I can still have a good breakout season. I can still improve. There's a lot to work on. Somebody that was on here, actually, the person that lived in this room before I did is episode 1 of this podcast, Tommy Williamson. He was a junior here on the Kalman soccer team when I was a freshman. And he basically didn't play much his freshman and sophomore year on the team. Junior year, we do this thing, captain's practice or captain's training in the summer before we can officially start preseason with the coaches because of the NCAA eligibility and stuff like that. Or like the dates, which is a bunch of bullshit, honestly. But it's the whole month of July. He gets injured as pretty much as we're getting close to preseason, and his ankle's out. He doesn't come back until late September, early October, if anything. Must have been like mid-September. And at that point, he's a junior.
Oh, wow.
And hasn't done much.
Right.
I'm a freshman, so I witnessed this whole thing. Comes down as a sub and scores. And that's one game. Cool. The next game comes on as a sub, scores again.
Wow.
And he keeps on going, and he reaches double digits in goal scoring. COVID hits. He keeps on training and then gets drafted. I think it was number 12 overall in the MLS, and he's still playing pro today.
That's crazy.
And you look at it, and it's like, well, that was one season in which he balled out as a sub. Nobody would have predicted something like that. He didn't have that tremendous season. And we even joke about it to this day. Tommy's a great friend of all of us, but it's like, how the fuck did he do that? Like, what the hell? How was he the one to be able to do that? And you see him playing pro now, and it's like, yeah, he's balling and he's doing his thing. Point being, you have to know of other people that have gone through it and that have struggled as well, and be like, well, if he was able to do it, why can't I do it? Why can't I keep pushing? So it's important to have that North Star. Was it Jet?
Yeah.
So to have a guy like him in mind and be like, well, he was able to PR another 2 feet or another 3 feet, and then he did it again before graduating high school. Why can't I?
Yeah, exactly. And my brother was my sophomore year. My brother was a senior, and like he ended up jumping, like he jumped 14 feet his junior year, and I jumped 14 feet my sophomore year. But his senior year, he went and jumped 15 feet for the first time, and then at the very last, like the second to last meet, the CIF Masters meet, he jumped 16 feet, and and then he got recruited to Cal State Long Beach.
Yeah.
And so, just to lead from my sophomore year, I guess, into my junior year, it was like, okay, I've got potential in the sport. I've jumped 14 feet. I'm in a position to where if I jump, like a foot and a half higher, I could look at this to go to college, And so I trained, and I don't think we did the club series that year. I think it was, I'm not fully sure. I don't fully remember it, but
all good.
That was, so just flash forward all the way, trained that whole off season, pole vaulted a ton. And I think that was the first year I also did a lot of, sprint training and weight training with a specialized coach who was the sprint coach on our high school team that had a club, and he had trained a bunch of people in athletics. And so I had weight trained with him a decent amount, and also, sprint trained with him throughout my sophomore year. And so then it led to my junior year. My first meet was the pole vault summit. And so to describe the pole vault summit, it's basically all of the pole vaulters in America and then a bunch of like international ones all at one meet. There's 16 pits in one arena, all lined up like around each other. There's also a professional section, and it's a course. It's over a course of 2 or 3 days, and like the first day, all the pros jump, so all the kids get to go watch like a pro competition, and it's all levels of pro. It's the high level and then like the B level of professional pole vaulters, and men's and women's. So you watch that, and then you go and compete the next day, and like. They have, there's like pit 1 is like the pit that everybody wants to be on because it's like the best people of that like section. And so they compete from like 8 a.m. all the way until like 6 p.m. that night, just competitions over and over and over again, following one after another. And so it's a huge meet, and everybody stays in basically like the same hotel because of the event they give you a deal, and it's in Reno, Nevada. And so there's really nothing else going on there besides this pole vault summit. And so it's a huge competition. And I went to it my first 2 years as well. And I think I PR'd my first 2 times going, and I was like, I like the meet a lot, and the energy is insane because there's so many people. It's so loud, and it's unlike anything else. And it's for California guys, it's their first indoor meet. We had never been to indoor meet like in other states. Indoor track and field is like a way bigger thing because of inclement weather.
Yeah.
So you're competing indoors. There's tons of people around you, and this was I think I had done a couple of meets over the off season, and I had jumped 14.6. And now that I remember, because I jumped 14.6 before the meet that I went to the pole vault summit, and so I was like, okay, I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to jump high. I think I can jump 15 feet. I just jumped 14.6, the previous meet, and I show up, and I think that morning I was like throwing up. I had gotten like a little sick. I was throwing up, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have the worst day. I'm super sick. I get out there, and I'm like warming up. I feel like shit, man. I just feel like I'm going to do horrible. And at my opening bar, I made it on my 3rd attempt. And my opening bar was pretty low at that time. I think it was like 12.6 or maybe 13 feet. I was like, oh my God, like I barely made that bar. Let's see if I can still stick in it and try and jump higher. And I made the 2nd bar on my 3rd attempt. And then eventually, like the bars went 8 inches, which is like a bigger increment because usually they just go 6 inches, and it had gotten to 14. I think I made 14.2, and then it was going to 14.10, and there was one other guy in the competition left. I didn't realize that me and him had only made the bar, and the other guy was from I think Israel or something like that. So like fully foreign guy. I don't know this guy. He barely speaks English, whatever. And he's jumping. He makes 14.10 or something like that on his first attempt. And I'm like, okay. I'm like sitting there, I'm like, oh, dude, he just made it on my first attempt. My dad's like, go tell the official you're going to pass the next bar. You're going to pass to 15.2. And I'm like, oh, I've never even jumped 15 feet. I'm about to jump at 15.2 now. I'm like, okay, well, I'm in it to win it, so I'm going to do this. I go to the official, I'm telling him, okay, I'm passing the next bar. And because he was ahead of me in the order, what that does to him is it goes to the next bar. He is up again. He has 1 minute to jump. So the pressure's back on. He just took a jump. He's tired. I can literally see him physically tired. So it's like he's up again. He has to jump again. He jumps. He misses. And I think I came down, and I think I made it on my first or second try, 15.2, for like a huge PR. And like I got off the pit, and I literally like screamed. I was like, ah. I was super stoked, like insanely stoked. I was like, that was like my first huge PR, and I'm getting into the like upper echelon of high school pole vault thing. I was like 15.2, like this is insane. Actually, I think it might have been like 15.3 or something. I don't remember the exact bar. I could look it up after, but I was like, oh my God, like this is so real. I don't even think I jumped at the next bar. I had won the competition on that bar, and I was like, I'm reaching my goal. Like it was an amazing feeling, and especially after a long off season of training. And then I started a small little rut between where I didn't have the right pole, and so like the pole that I would jump on would be too small, and the next pole would be a little bit too big. And so I ended up jumping like 14.6 the next meet, and then 14.6 again. I was like, what the heck? Like I'm not even jumping at 15 feet. And I just gone to longer poles too after that meet, and they were like, to me they were more intimidating because I think I went from like 14s to 15 feet long poles. I was like, okay, like, I should jump higher on a 15-foot pole for sure. And then I wasn't doing it. And then, I got to the right place. And that was also when I had also experienced like my first no height in a while too, where I showed up and I just, I blew through the smaller pole, and then I just didn't get into the pit enough on the second and the third jump. And I was super upset because I was like, I just thought I had reached my goal, and I was ready for the best season of my life, and now I'm just underperforming over and over again. It was super disappointing, but then I knew that I could get through it, and I knew that there was more in me because in that moment I jumped 15 something from a shorter run, indoors, and I've developed a lot more. I'm ready to jump higher outdoors, and then at like a dual meet or something like that, or like a small invite meet, I jump 15.6, and then I take, my first jumps at like 16 feet, and I was stoked. Like 15.6 was crazy, and then that video ended up getting posted out to a lot of places. And after I jumped 15.6 was when I started getting my first like contact by college coaches, and that's when it got like super real. You know, and a bunch of coaches were messaging my dad, and it was like Ivy League schools, and like I could go to college now, and like I wasn't even planning on going to college, and then like my pole vault career took off, and so now I have this huge opportunity for myself, you know, and then going into that championship season, I win league, I win CIF prelims, I win CIF finals, and I was like, okay, this is pretty good. I just won, like my division finals. Then I go to CIF Masters, and I win that based off of like jumps. And I beat two older guys that had jumped 16 plus, and I ended up only jumping like I jumped like 15.8 or something like that, or 15.9 at that meet to win it. I had PR'd like by an inch every championship meet, and then I go to the state meet. I qualify through the prelims with like 2 jumps. I show up to the final. I'm like, all right, I'm stoked. I'm ready to go. Unfortunately, we had an international student move to California that year. And so he was like much older than everybody else and jumped way higher. So I wasn't in the running to win the meet. But it was like, between all the people that were like, we had all jumped together in California, we're like, all right, let's see what we can do. And I ended up placing 5th place, but I made the same bar as the guy who got second just because of misses. And so I was super stoked. I was like, I jumped the same bar as the guy who got second. And, a couple years prior, that same bar had won it, and I'm a junior. So I'm super stoked about that year. I'm ready to come back hard for the next year,
Quick break right there. So junior year is when you're starting to get college looks. How long was it between that 15.2, 15.3 PR to when you were competing like this at CIFs?
Yeah, it was a couple months, because it was like, I think it was like 6 or 7 weeks between that. Like I had a little lull, and then I came back. And once I jumped 15.6, I think I PR'd every meet after that, all the way up into the championship meeting. Because even at the state meet, I jumped 15.10 for a PR there.
That's crazy how quickly everything worked. And it's crazy as well how I didn't know that side of pole vaulting, where it's a bit of a poker, when you went bar up and you see this guy and you can tell he's not going to make it. That's a crazy rule that you don't have to go first and give this guy a break.
Yeah, because the order is based off of performance, and so if you have whoever has the best mark is at the bottom of the sheet, and so they read down the sheet at every bar. So if you're listed better than the person, you get a tactical advantage over them, because if you watch them make a bar, you can pass, and if they make that bar and you can make that bar and the next bar, you pass again. You're making them jump over and over again while you're sitting there resting. Especially if it's just you and another guy, it's super tactical in that aspect. Yeah.
That part is very interesting for sure. The next one that caught my attention right now is you get the same height as second place. Yeah. And obviously it's going to motivate you. Were you at all discouraged because of the misses that placed you at 5th, or not as much? Not as much, because, in track and field, it's like every meet that you PR, it's like, that's a good day. Obviously.
Because you're even though you're really not supposed to base your success and increase of athletic capability off of your performance, it's like a reassurance that things are going the right way. And especially so many weeks in a row, like after I had a lull moment in the early season, I was like, this is exactly what we trained for. We trained to peak in the off season, like we trained to peak in the championship season. And so just doing exactly that, it really made me like confident in my training and everything I had done leading up to that meet.
You said that you shouldn't base off what off of your performance?
Like athletic capability.
Capability. So what do you think you should measure your athletic capability off of?
Like your personal success, your personal growth. And so like in pole vaulting, there's a lot of times where it's like, okay, like I'm jumping on bigger poles and longer poles, but I'm not jumping higher, but it's like I'm getting to the right place to where I could. And that's what's important, is that you will be moving forward even though your performance won't increase, but because you're moving forward, it's what keeps you going until your performance does increase.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's the thing, again, going back to Olympic sports, that I love so much, and how objective it is, that there's still improvement regardless of the placing. And ever since I started this back when I was, because right now I'm like, it's the first semester that I'm no longer playing soccer. But when I was like playing, I would think that to myself. It's like, well, team maybe didn't play the way we wanted to, or the result didn't go our way, but look at the individual
Yeah.
performance. Look at what you did and what you improved on, and that's something that's helped me a lot from the Olympic sports. But that's, again, the same thing with everything. I was golfing yesterday, and at one point, I remember one of my friends that I was with, I just mishit a ball, and he just says, "You hit it forward." And I mean, he's a much better golfer than I am. I'm still like starting off, but he goes, "It went forward."
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah,
That's what it's about.
I'm 100 yards closer to the hole. Maybe I wanted to be 150 yards closer, but I'm closer.
Definitely, yeah.
And it's to an extent, it's similar or the same approach that you just have to take. Oh, did I par that hole or did I birdie it? No, you didn't.
Yeah.
You double bogeyed, but it's better than quadding the hole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've always had to adjust my focus because and it'll make sense. Like the whole story is kind of lined up to the very end, and so it's like it'll make sense. Like trusting that you're getting better even though your performance isn't rising is a huge aspect of sport.
You take me through that story, and I'm sure you'll tie it in how you can trust yourself within the sport, and then I'll ask questions once you're done with that part.
Yeah, so then I go into my senior year, and I'm like, all right, my junior year, I did good, getting college offers. Like, I'm about to start going on some visits. I've got some serious offers at some good programs, where I could really have success in the sport and like create opportunities educationally that I never was going to have. And, it wasn't as like easy as I thought it was going to be, the whole recruiting process. There was some bumps in it. Like there was another school that I had planned on going to that the coach had gotten fired from, and then later on stuff with Cal that had happened. But I trained really hard for that year, and I was like, okay, I can definitely, like 15-10, I'm like, that's basically 16 feet. So I still have an opportunity to jump 17 feet. I have an opportunity for the school record, which was formerly held by, my dad and my uncle and stuff like that. And so like this all-time list is full of my family. And so I want to reclaim that school record for my family kind of thing. And so I trained really hard. I go to that pole vault summit that same year and I underperform. And I was really frustrated. I was like, this really sucks. Like, but then I look back and I was like, okay, I didn't, like, maybe I got lucky that first meet I was able to pull more out of myself than I currently had. And then that's why I had that lull and then success. And I was like, okay, I'm here to peak in the off season. Like, this meet isn't the end all be all. Like it's not huge. And by that point, I had already signed to Cal too. I had signed to Cal in like December or something like that. So like I already have my college set up and everything like that. It doesn't matter really how much higher I jump, besides like increasing, scholarship and stuff like that. So then I go into that season and I jump a couple of lower bars, not getting, I think I had jumped under 15 feet for a couple of those other meets, just making my opening bar. And then I was like in a tough spot where I wasn't going to qualify for like a big invitational. And then like I ended up like last chance making 15-2 at some random, like an invite that's like in my town. And so like that ended up qualifying, and that kind of begun like a spree back upwards. And I was winning a lot of meets, but like I still wasn't satisfied because I wasn't increasing my performance. I was in a lull. I wasn't PRing. I was taking good attempts at it, but I wasn't hitting the marks, and I was struggling with moving to larger poles, which became an issue and which really stunted my performance. And in that season kind of blew by, which really sucked because that was like my last high school season. It was like, then I went to league. I was super stressed at that meet because I was like, I'm not jumping well. I got to jump well to, continue on. I got to make sure I don't no height at this meet. And, I ended up making it, past league, past CIF prelims. I go to CIF finals. I end up winning that meet. I think I jumped 15.6 and everybody else jumped 15 or something like that. And then I go to CIF Masters. I'm reigning champion. I got to like bring up my stuff. And then I ended up having my hand tear open at one of the previous meets. And so like I would bleed out of my hand when I would jump like a ton. And it was like profuse pain. Like it felt like people were stabbing me with needles, and it was horrible. And so like I really had to overcome that big time, especially in the championship season, and make it bigger than, how my hand feels. I need to make these meets for myself. And I luckily I won CIF finals, but then the problem is I'm competing every weekend. I'm not taking enough time. So those weeks in between, I would barely train because of my hand. I couldn't pole vault. I would do runs and stuff like that, but I couldn't pole vault, and there was a moment, like, I tried everything. I tried fully taping my hand, making all these crazy tape contraptions to where my hand didn't feel the same, stress and tear and cause pain and make it worse. But ultimately, I would just have to wait every week and let my hand heal to jump at the next weekend, which was super tough because in the championship season, you're like, I got to be dialed in. And so you want to jump a lot to make sure that you're like really dialed in and ready to perform. At least that's what I thought then, was like, through consistency in practice and at meets, I'll, breed consistency later on. And I go into that CIF Masters meet and I think I tied for third place, with like some younger guys. And I was like upset because I knew I should have won the meet. I could have won the meet. And like, I was like, okay, that's all right. I still qualified for the state meet. Like, the Masters meet doesn't matter really. It's about the state championship. I qualify, I get through the state prelims, but now I have to jump back to back. And I jump on that first day and I fully tear my hand open and I'm like bleeding and it's horrible pain. And then it's like, you don't have a week to heal anymore. You got to jump tomorrow. And so then I go into my last high school meet and I barely make my first bar and that's all I did. And I remember being super upset about it, but like, in the long run, it didn't hold much bearing because I was like, okay, time to move on, time to go to collegiate stuff,
But yeah, it's definitely I'm assuming a difficult end to the ups and downs of your high school journey.
Definitely.
Because you look at it and comparing where you were by the end to your freshman year is incredible. Like let's take a second and be like, wow, I'm sure you were a similar height than you are now, so different strength and everything, but but even like the PRs you're talking about, like it was a lot of improvement.
Yeah.
The issue I think with these stories of success is that many people will just judge it off of that. Oh, Skyler wasn't able to compete on that specific day. He just wasn't good. Something must have happened. And it's like, even you look at pro sports, whatever the sport may be, and it's like, oh, they didn't perform well today. Like, something's up. Like, they should get benched or something. And it's like, bro, you don't know what's going on in their personal life. Some people may not have realized. Maybe if I just looked at the stats.
Oh, yeah.
At the score sheet, I'm like, what's up with this kid?
Yeah.
But you don't know about the hand. You don't know about anything else that they're going through. Same thing as before. And sometimes, yes, there are surprises where you PR every single week or you have a huge PR out of not nowhere, but like very surprising.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing on the downfall. And I think it's like I'm assuming you're going to get to, and overall by the end we'll get to like the trusting the process part. But I think it's important to understand that while right now, out of what I've seen, you're like in a very good stage with pole vaulting, it's important to recognize that this happens and that it will happen again, whether we like it or not, for everyone. For everyone. We could be at the top of our game right now. You have to know that in anything in life, that's coming again. It's not like, oh, now I'm set, now I'm good. No. Like, it's going to come over and over and over again. And regardless of how you finished your high school career, there's still something to be proud of. And I think it's something that a lot of people don't understand. It's always about, oh, he didn't finish out the way he wanted to, then oh well, bad career. And it's like, no, dude, look at everything that happened, and he finished at the top of his game. Oh, he's gonna kill it in college. You don't know what's coming, and you don't know what's coming after college. So it's important to put things into perspective. I have a couple of questions before we get into your collegiate career and what happens there. From a couple of things you said with the poles, especially like the different heights and lengths of a pole. How important is it to have that feel with a pole? How many do you have? For example, for us, the cleats are comfortable? Cool. If you like them, set. Have 2-3 pairs. You can trade around depending on the grass you're playing on, if it's soft ground or firm ground. And that's pretty much it. Like, some people could have more, but if you have 2 to 3, that's like standard. Yeah.
So usually people at my level, they'll bring anywhere from, I think, 5 to 9 poles to a meet. Okay. And it's really person to person. And so every pole, some of them are made out of different material, but most of them are made out of fiberglass, and the ones I use are made out of fiberglass. Some of them use carbon fiber or a hybrid. And so like they're made out of like forged fiberglass, and every one has a test weight, which is like a weight rating, which doesn't hold very much true to like the pole, because in reality what all the poles they're flex tested, and where they put the same amount of weight at the same point in every pole, and then the amount of centimeters that it drops, that's the flex rating. And so a stiffer pole has a smaller number and a softer pole has a bigger number. And so making sure that you have the right pole is crucial to the sport. If you're on too big of a pole, like you could get hurt, and you could not make the bar on the backside. You might not get deep enough to land in the pit. And if you're on too soft of a pole, like you're just gonna hit the bar on the front side, or you'll break it. And so it's a big balancing act. And like if you have a huge headwind, you got to use a smaller pole because you're not running as fast. And if you, in the same way as if you have a huge tailwind, you're running faster, you're going to need that bigger pole. Or if you're feeling way better at a certain day, or way worse. And so it's about having that covered, at the top end. But also, like when you show up and you're taking your first warm up jump, you're not going to go and jump on the biggest pole or whatever pole you use to jump your PR on. It's like you got to go a couple poles lower than that, because if your step isn't on, like if you're too close to the box or you're too far from the box, like if you're on too big of a pole for that, like it could be dangerous. So it's like you have to have enough poles to warm up on and enough poles to compete on.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about sharing? Do you ever share your poles?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So pole vaulting is such a tight knit community where there are exact times where other competitors will even share their poles with you. Of course, it's a little bit harder now because a lot of people are on way different poles, and so like the poles I use are like 5.1 meters long, and that my teammate and training partner, he uses 5 meter long poles. And then there's guys in like in high school, I used like 4.6 meter long poles, and a lot of like early collegiate and really good high school guys use like 4.9 meter long poles. So it's like, that's where the crossover kind of plays. And then obviously if I weigh more than somebody else, I'm going to be on a stiffer pole than somebody who is, weighs less. And so there's a huge crossover with that. And I'll get into that more as well, because I ended up reaching some issues with some poles in college.
Okay. Well, definitely, I'll keep that in mind, and we'll talk about that. The other thing you mentioned, not going to college or not wanting to go to college.
Yeah.
What was going on there?
Yeah. So I wasn't in the best financial situation to attend college, and so my opportunity for that was my local community college. And so luckily my dad was the pole vault coach there as well. So it was like I had a big backup. It was like if I didn't get to go to college, I could train with my dad for 2 years and I could transfer somewhere, or even 1 year, And so that was definitely like that was a thing. It was like, I wanted to, my interest lied in like computers and stuff like that and technology. But like, then again, I didn't have all the money in the world to, go into a big college, or, the grades. I wasn't a phenomenal student. I was a decent student enough to get into Cal through athletics. And, I'm at the NCAA minimum GPA, but I wasn't, 4.0 plus, like nowhere near. So it was like I never really liked school. So I was like, do I really want to go pay to go to school somewhere else? Not really. I would much rather just pole vault, and then end up getting like a normal job or like a trades job or something like that.
Interesting. Yeah, I saw you were into computers and tech. You're a data science major, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What is it about school, or at least back then, that you didn't like?
Gosh, for me, it's just like if it doesn't interest me, it's hard to get me to pay attention to it. Like, and so if it's English class and if I gotta write a paper about something that doesn't pique my interest, it's like, it's mentally draining to do. Like I sit there, I'm like, I don't want to do this, and it's like, I end up getting through it, but it's like things that don't interest me, I don't want to do, because I get to do the things that do interest me all the time. And like, obviously, you got to do the things you don't want to do a lot of the time. But like, if there's a bigger goal, a bigger picture to it, it's like nobody wants to go out and do all the cardio training and like all that conditioning and stuff like that. But it's like, if it's going to make me a better pole vaulter, of course I'm going to do that. Like that lies in line with my goal. And like, I had gotten some better interest because like at the end of like high school, like you get to pick more of your classes. And so I got to do like AP computer science. And so like I like doing that class, but like calculus was still kind of iffy with me. I was good at math younger, but it wasn't like I was insanely intrigued by it. But computer science, I was definitely in love with, as an academic standpoint. So that was the first time I like enjoyed doing school. And then of course like history classes and stuff like that are just like, this is not my thing.
Yeah, I think that the biggest issue with all of this is exactly what you mentioned, where there's interest. And it's a good point that to pursue any goal and to actually work hard for something, you have to have interest in it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you have to do the things you don't want to do. Nobody wants to wake up early and
Yeah.
go on that cardio training or lift certain weights or do that extra circuit of abs. Like, you don't want to do that. Nobody's like, yay, I'm going to wake up and do this today. No. But if there's a bigger goal attached to it, of course you're going to want to. The issue there lies in that there's no grit without interest.
Yes.
And in your case, whether that's history or English, if there's no bigger goal attached to it,
Yeah.
of course you're not going to want to do it. And I think that's a certain issue with school, especially after certain years. I'm not going to lie and say here that that was my case. I'm really like school, and I'm on the opposite side. I stopped liking the STEM side of things, and I like English,
Yeah.
history, like the complete opposite of you. But if you, like here at Cal, take calculus or do these classes, it's like, dude, I don't care about this. And
Yeah.
is it good? Is it important to learn it? I genuinely think so. But it's just hard when you don't care.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I've done some work in the computer industry already, just with like the fact that I was going to Cal. And so like I'd work these jobs and I was like, wait a second, so we don't need to know like all of these crazy calculus things that I'm learning? And they're like, not really,
Yeah.
And so like that kind of got in the way a little bit, because it's like I liked computer science and I liked coding and stuff like that. And then it's like, okay, yeah, but if you want to be a computer science major, you got to take these crazy math classes. And I'm like, okay, I'll take a couple of math classes. That's okay. I've taken math before. I can endure a couple years. But then it's like, I remember every year, like I remember when I finished like math 1B, I was like, all right, sweet, my final year of math. And then it was like, no, you got one more. I was like, okay, I got one more semester of math. Then it turned out I had taken a math class basically every semester after that, and like doing all sorts of crazy stuff that I was like, not only do I believe that this doesn't really correlate much into coding, I mean, like it does, for like the research aspect, but I was like, but also like, there's no way I could use this in the field. So like, this is really hard for me to be interested in it. And the only reason I'm interested in it is because if I don't pass this class, then I can't pole vault.
Yeah. And that's to a certain extent tying a bigger goal to your academics. Like pole vaulting, in a very clear way, was motivating you academically, which is to a certain extent the beauty of being a student athlete, right? And just being able to manage both, or to be motivated to go to school. I'm surprised you weren't more into something like physics with what you're describing about the wind and like the poles and all these things.
Yeah,
I mean, that's very basic physics, to be clear.
or even like biomechanics and stuff like that, because like I've studied pole vault technique a lot, and I know I've learned a lot about it, and I've coached pole vaulting for a decent chunk of my lifetime. And so it's like, definitely I had some interest in biomechanics, but then it's like, then there's that huge math aspect to it that it just like turns me away sometimes. I'm just like, ugh. But at least I do enjoy coding and stuff like that. So that luckily helps me with school a lot.
Yeah. With the other questions I had, just to close off the school part too, that's another thing I like about the student athlete aspect, is that in terms of financials, in today's world, it's extremely overpriced in my opinion. And even like you look at Berkeley, which in-state especially, it's like, you compare it to other schools, it's not as expensive, like relatively as expensive. And you still look at it, it's fucking expensive. For what you're getting.
Even just
overall.
rent in the Bay Area is expensive.
On top of that, there's the rent, there's the food. I when I talk to friends and they're like, when you go out to dinner, like what are the prices like? And I'm like, holy shit, you're paying what in other states? It's ridiculous how overpriced it is in California, in the Bay Area, etc. But even just school itself, I think it's awesome. Not only for you, for so many people that you get a scholarship and that allows you to do this, because it is way too overpriced in my opinion at this point.
I mean, I didn't get the biggest scholarship, with my high school mark, but in reality, what they really got me with was they got me admission to the school, and luckily I got a lot of financial aid, which is basically like the same thing, and so it helped me get through school that I otherwise wouldn't be able to afford or even get into.
Yeah. With the last few years of high school, did you continue posting?
Not really, because I wasn't PRing.
Yeah.
So I didn't post much, but so there is definitely like that lull where it's like you see my junior year posts, and then it's like if I won a meet and I jumped over 15.6, I think I posted a video, and so I was very critical about what I was posting. I was like, if it wasn't like a really good jump, I'm not posting it, or and then I think that was like my senior year, or my junior year, I had even posted a video of me in practice training, and so like my senior year, I did not post very much videos of me pole vaulting. Maybe pictures from whatever I was doing, but yeah, that was like a lull of videos of me pole vaulting for sure.
The reason I asked that is because it's so interesting that you say you would only post if you PR and how it kept you going for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting for two reasons. The first one is a lot of people will have this perspective on social media, which is very valid, that they say that people only post their highlights and their best
Literally,
things, and
yeah.
it's not actual life. It's only the best pieces of their life, and that's fair. It's a good point of view. But from an athletic stance, it could motivate you and keep you going, and be like, well, it's this standard, and if it's not a PR, if it's not better, I'm not going to post it. And then it kept you PRing for a bit. Something that happened this past season with one of my teammates, Fahmi Ibrahim. He just posted so much on social media, and he loved posting any tiny highlight from a game and making like the TikToks of like a day in the life of a game day, like all these things, and we would give him so much shit for it. But what I noticed was the more he posted, the better he would perform, because he wanted content to post.
You gotta back it up, yeah, and you need the content, yeah.
Exactly. It's not even to back it up. It's he needed content to post.
Yeah.
So he would try crazy things in games, and it worked out for him, and he ended up having his best career at Cal.
Oh, yeah.
I think he was a top 3 scorer in the conference and like second team all Pac-12.
Yeah.
He had a terrific season. But in my opinion, there was some correlation between the more he posted, the more content he needed, the better he would perform.
Yeah, definitely.
It's funny how things work that way, because, like I mentioned, many people will criticize social media. It's only their PRs. They're not showing you when they're failing in practice and when they can't even reach their height. But it does push you.
Yeah, like me and my roommate, we both post on social media quite a bit. And we had made that decision this summer before this season, and like we had joked about like in practice a couple of times, like, well, I don't really feel like I'm good enough to go to the next poll, but like I definitely could. And it's like, well, you gotta go because you need the content. And like we would joke about stuff like that, and be like, you gotta do it, for the gram kind of thing. Like you gotta, and stuff like that. And then it's like that's the other glory of pole vaulting is like, a lot of times the fails in pole vaulting are more valuable viewership content than even like making a big bar. Like, because we posted so much, we know what like a lot of people react to, and it's like there's only 2 things people want to see in pole vaulting. They want to see people eat shit, and they want to see them clear a bar by a lot. Like it doesn't matter if I post a video of me PRing and I'm like close to the bar on all sides, people don't care about it. They want to see my opening bar jump where I'm like huge over it, and they're like, oh my god, like look how much height he put on it. He could have jumped way higher, and they always like, and so it's like kind of playing into that aspect a little.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting how you can continue to get your reps in just because of wanting to make content. And it's hilarious how it works, but it's true.
Yeah.
And the other thing, last thing before we move on, that caught my attention, you were saying that you kept PRing at a certain point week after week after week. And what it reminds me of is at the beginning of the conversation, you were talking about how you show up for the first time, I believe it was 7th grade, and it was like your first full meet, and you were like, wow, so much to improve on. But if you notice, especially through that, I mean, yes, there's ups and downs in your career, as in any career, but there's only improvement by, as in golf, hitting the ball forward, by keep going forward. Like, when you continue to go to a meet or events or whatever it is, week after week after week, you're naturally going to improve. It'd be funny to think, well, after 10 meets, I was able to reach the height I wanted, and I'm done. No, you have to do it multiple times.
Yeah.
It's something I'm going through right now. because I'm going to start taking this project specifically a bit more seriously.
Yeah.
Especially like with school and soccer and everything. I'm going through in that transition. But I look at myself and it's like, as of right now, as of today, I've posted, I think, 31 episodes.
Oh, wow.
Think about where you'd be at if your 31 meets in, is a mentality I have now, because
Exactly.
I don't see many people around me. So it's like, oh, who else is doing this? That's like, that I know.
Right.
And then 31, like, it's like a number. I think there's a stat that there's like 2 to 3 million podcasts in the world, but only the top 1% get over 20 episodes.
Oh, wow.
If you really look at most podcasts out there, many people started it. Many people said they wanted to do it because it sounded nice, but their goal sounded nicer than what they actually wanted to achieve. So they ended up posting 1, 2, maybe 3 episodes.
Yeah.
They like only the top 1% get past 20.
Oh, wow.
Even then, it's so little. Like, I'm criticizing myself when I say this, because it's like, am I expecting to be reaching 17 feet after 31 meets?
No.
Fuck no. Like,
Exactly.
I have to grind more for this, and it's like a fun process where I have to edit more and I have to record more and things like that. And it's a grind, and there's different seasons for everything. Like, this is my 4th episode of this week, and I'm recording one later today. So like,
wow.
I'm in that phase right now. But it's hilarious for you to take me through that, and I'm reflecting it off of myself, where it's like, dude, you've posted 31 episodes.
Yeah.
Like, how do you expect to reach that PR? And even when I go through the summer, and hopefully by the end of the year, getting to 100, if I do stick to it in a disciplined way, that's still only 100 meets. That's nothing. You probably went through 100 meets by your sophomore year of high school.
Yeah.
And look at where you are now. Not even senior, like not even senior in college, senior in high school, like doubling that. So it's funny how reps work and how you can tie it to other things. Like me connecting a fucking podcast to pole vaulting.
Yeah.
But in the same way you connected your sport to gymnastics in one way or another with the rings and that training, which is super interesting. I would love, especially because I'm close with especially the women's side of gymnastics, but with some of the guys as well, it would be so interesting to see
a crossover.
Of sports.
Yeah, because a lot of pole vaulters come from gymnastics, because like, you know, like how, like there aren't a lot of opportunities to do gymnastics in college, and like obviously a lot of high school teams don't have gymnastics. So like a lot of pole vaulters are ex-gymnasts. Like a lot of them, they go and they're like, all right, middle school's done, I don't want to do gymnastics anymore, and it's like they get pushed right into pole vaulting, and that's where a lot of great pole vaulters have come from before. And so like there's huge crossovers in just body awareness and, you know, body control.
Which is super interesting, considering, again, not that height matters, because you said pole vaulting doesn't discriminate, but there's a huge physical difference between the sports. Not at that age, but today.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's what a lot of the gymnasts we do get. They're like the too tall gymnasts. Oh, I was too tall, so they pushed me to pole vaulting.
Yeah. That's
and by too tall they mean average height. You know.
Exactly.
It's so crazy.
No, it's crazy. I think there's one Cal gymnast right now that's like 6 feet tall, and all the rest of them are shorter. But again, to their defense, they're fucking massive.
Oh, yeah.
They are ripped, and it's like,
oh, yeah.
It's completely different to any other sport.
Yeah.
So you get to Cal, and I mean, I think we're the same class, right?
My first year was 2019 to 2020 in the spring, yeah.
Yeah, so we are the same class, and I mean, I'm sure we have that similar experience there, especially because you are, although you kind of are a year-round sport, you're more of a spring, winterish sport. So we have that similar experience, which we'll get through and pass, because I mean, everybody knows what happens with COVID, right? It's not a surprise, it's not a spoiler, like everybody fucking knows. But what was that experience like for you in the first year of college pole vaulting?
Yeah, I mean, first year of college was crazy. It was like, you know, it was a lot of fun. Like it's like I'm out on my own, I get to do whatever I want. I get to meet whoever I want to meet. Like if I wake up one morning, I'm like, I'm going to go and meet random people. Like that's totally like a normal thing in college. And so like you know, it was a lot of fun, big social aspect of it, but also like training was way different. You know, I'm lifting a lot more. I had lifted a little bit my last few years of high school, but it was like I'm lifting 3 times a week now. I'm sprinting, you know, every single day. I'm doing more off the pole vault runway training than I am pole vaulting, and which was a big difference because I most of my training before was just pole vaulting, and this is also my first time not being coached by my dad, you know. And I got recruited by a different coach that I ended up with at Cal, which is like another big aspect. I ended up lucking out with like a way better coach, and I'm super blessed in that you know area that it all worked out in the end, you know, to where I could get a really good coach that, you know, people that my dad has coached before had worked with him and had loved him. So, you know, I go through that season and I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to get faster for sure. You know, I'm learning all of these things that I do wrong when I run, and because I was pretty slow, and I'm like, and I'm getting to the point where I'm not going to be growing as much, so I can finally fill out my frame instead of just being, you know, lanky. And so I focused heavily on, you know, sprinting and weightlifting, and then I go into the season. I moved to longer pulls. I'd gotten to 15.7s, which are like 475 and 490 pulls. And I was like, okay, you know, like I'm getting there, you know, I'm improving, you know, not performance yet because we haven't had season. So I'm like, I'm ready to do good. And I had never jumped on like a 4.9 meter pole going into my first meet of college. And in warm-ups, I blow through my last 475 pole, and it's like, all right, you got to go to longer poles. And you're like, I've never done this. I've never jumped on a pole that long before, which I'll touch on more later on that whole aspect, that mental aspect of the pole thing. And so like I go and I jump on that pole. It works out. And it's like, all right, I'm ready to jump super high. I'm jumping on like a foot longer pole than I did in high school. Like, let's do this. Like, I'm super stoked. You know, and I'm coming in pretty low because it's like, you know, I haven't competed in a while. So I open at like 14 feet or something like that, I believe, or 14.4, you know, something crazy low like that. I'm like, all right, lowest I haven't opened in a long time, but, you know, it should be easy. I've been folding this whole off season. I'm ready to do this. I run down the runway, and I ended up running way faster because, you know, the heat of competition, and I put myself under. I end up, you know, getting totally wrecked to take off, rejected, and I land back on the ground, like on the ground, my first ever college jump. And I'm like, huh. So yeah, like I was just fully befuddled. I was like, what the hell just happened? And then like, you know, I go and I try the pole again, and I move it like a little bit more, which like I was surprised that this pole was so big. And then I end up, you know, making that bar on it by tons of height. I had a huge height over it, and I'm making that bar. And then I go to the next pole, and then, like, you know, I have similar issues where it's just too big for me at first because I was trying so much harder when I really needed to not. And like I left my first college meet like jumping like 14 low. And I was like, oh my God, like what the heck just happened? Like I suck, you know? It was a really crazy experience, but I was like, I also had hope though, because I was like, okay, you know, it was a bad college, like it was a bad first meet, but I was like, I jumped on these longer poles, so like that means I'm so much more capable of something else. And I don't think I posted about that meet. I didn't. Maybe I did. I'm not fully sure, but I did post at the end, like when COVID happened. I posted like a season highlight to be like, oh, you know, my season's over and stuff like that. And so then I went back and I trained hard, and then, you know, I came to the second meet, and then it was like I went to a longer run at that meet. And I jumped on this one pole, which was like, it's like a 490, 175. And then, you know, I could use that pole in the warm-ups, and it was looking a little small. So it's like, all right, let's go to the 490, 180, which is, you know, 180-pound test weight. I'm like, okay. And then I start on that pole, my first jump, same thing. I'm under, I get wrecked to take off, and I end up like fully stalling above the box in the ground, just getting my feet on the bar to pull myself into the pit. And I'm like, oh my God, I almost died. What the heck? So then I had to go back down poles. And it wasn't until like the end of that season that I had realized that the flex rating between those poles was equivalent to going up like 2-point-something poles. And I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Like, I just didn't know at the time about the flex rating. And we ended up getting a pole in between that to fill that gap. But it was just like, it was like kind of like a bad thing I did that, like, you know, it led to some issues, because I was like I couldn't move that next pole for some reason, but in reality it was just I was, you know, missing the pole in between, which, you know, caused a bunch of issues. And then I went to our like indoor conference, and I didn't even jump on the longer poles at that point. I stayed on like 475. I went back down for that whole meet, and that I was also beginning to struggle with some stress injury in my like lower leg that made it hard. But I also at that meet I also got to compete against my brother for the first time in a long time, and so that was a really good meet, and I'm pretty sure I beat him, which was like for me I was like, hey, college is pretty meh, but I just beat my brother, and like I was pretty stoked with that. But I was like, I know I'm capable of much more, and I'm just ready for outdoor because like California kids, they just aren't really ready for indoor pole vault. It takes a couple years to adjust, and then so I was like, I was super stoked, and then obviously that COVID stuff happened, and if we can discuss it if you want to. I don't know how deep you want me to go into that.
Go for it. Like
Yeah.
if there's something you want to say, sure. My point was everybody knows like COVID hits, and I think it's part of the podcast every single time I record it. It's inevitable.
Definitely.
It's inevitable because it's still so recent and it affected everybody that's like going through this. So for sure.
Yeah, and so obviously like me and my roommate, we were super committed to the sport. We tried to stay here as long as possible. We're like this is gonna be 2 weeks. It's just a big old overreaction. We're gonna get back into it. We're gonna get back to training. We got to be ready for outdoor season. We weren't super happy with the indoor season. We stayed longer than like anybody else on the team. Everybody had left, and the whole city of Berkeley was fully empty, and everything was locked down. You couldn't leave your house, and then like we kind of reached like a point where they wouldn't even let us out at the track to go and train just sprinting, and we were like, okay, I think we should just go home.
Yeah.
And we ended up leaving. I didn't pull up much that whole time really. I did a lot of training, running training and lifting training, and then a lot of surfing. I got back into surfing again, big in COVID, and I was like, I kind of took a big step back from pole vault because I wanted to like take a break and really like look at everything I was doing and be able to come back better. And even my coach had said that like this could be a good opportunity for you to develop more physically before you come back to the sport. And I was like, okay, I'm fine with that. Let's do that, and we'll kind of reset. And then when everything gets back going, we'll get back into training. And then, luckily my sophomore year they let us come back with crazy regulations. I'm sure you remember that. That was like all the stuff we were doing then. Like we look back at that and we're like, oh my God, that was horrible. Like we had to lift outside at like 6 a.m. The bars were freezing cold, and like that was pretty bad. And like they would only let like 24 people out at the track, and you had to be in your own separate cohort. But yeah, like that was pretty crazy, that whole year.
That reset that you talk about, I feel like is very important, especially for anybody that had those experiences prior. It's funny when we talk about being a freshman in college and COVID hits, because unless you had a terrific year, your freshman year, which is mostly not the case for anyone athletically, it's great to have this sort of reset. Like, I think that for freshman collegiate athletes, COVID is potentially one of the best things that could have happened, which is a very hot take, but when you really look at it, that reset is not something most people get, and it helps you mature and develop in so many different ways, whether that's physically or mentally. And getting back into something like surfing, everybody had their own thing, right? But having that outlet to express yourself in a different way, enjoy something that you hadn't in a long time, is so important. And I feel like it's sad that it took an entire worldwide shutdown for us to realize that, but at times it is important to disconnect and go into something else and into a different hobby before you go back into it. It's like when you're knocked down, people tend to get back up immediately and say, I can get back up, I can keep going. But it's important, I think, to stay down there for a bit and soak in the moment of your lowest low, so that you can know what you don't want to be in life, what you don't want to feel again, to know that feeling really well, so that then you're able to say, this is exactly where I don't want to come back to. Exactly. This is exactly what I want to escape, and this is exactly what I'm going to be working to not be in again, So I think, like I said, you get knocked down, I'll get back up immediately. Knock me down 6 times, I'll get back up 7. And it's like, yes, get back up every single time, but enjoy the time down there. Enjoy getting knocked down. Enjoy the feeling of feeling like shit when your face hits the canvas. Know what it's like and then get back up.
Yeah, I mean, and like that's the other thing is like, as a student athlete, everything's performance based. you know, like everything you do in life is performance based. You know, your athletic performance is judged, and then your academic performance. You get graded on everything, you get your mark, and it's like you're constantly being compared against everybody. And, you know, especially going to college, like that's a big thing, you know, and like you go to class, you're not you're nowhere near the smartest kid, you know, and then like you go out and, you know, you're like, okay, well, at least I'm good at pole vaulting, and then you go to the NCAA scene, and then it's like, not so much anymore, you know, and like you're like, well, what do I have, you know? And so that's why I agree with you about that break. It's like it really allowed me to reset and focus on, like, you know, everything isn't performance based. Like, you know, you can look at life differently and find more enjoyment in the things that you do performance based and not worry about the performance.
Yeah, it's weird how we're judged off of our performance. Do you think that's escapable though?
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that I struggled with my first 3 years, and I finally got away from it this year.
I'm sure we'll talk about that
Yeah.
then, but let's keep that in mind of how important it is, because I think that a lot of people definitely do think that their athletic performance is their self-worth, or that their performance
Definitely.
in school is their self-worth, especially at a school like Berkeley,
Oh,
where
yeah.
kids are like very strict with themselves about their GPAs, and like, I want to get an A, and it's like it's not that deep, man.
Exactly.
But besides that, it's like a lot of people will put their self-worth with their performance in whatever it is in life, athletic, academic, etc. But it's only when you disconnect to that both your self-worth and performance go up.
Oh, yeah.
So they are intertwined,
Oh,
but as
yeah.
soon as you disconnect them in your head is when things start to go your way.
Yeah, and you like a lot of people will think that it's like, okay, if I increase my performance, my self-worth will go up. But if you increase your self-worth, your performance will go up as well. It goes both ways.
There's this crazy quote that says, I don't know it exactly, but I'll
Yeah.
paraphrase, right? It's not whether it's, okay, so you don't need a perfect life at work to have a perfect life at home, but if you have a perfect life at home, your work is going to naturally improve. Like,
Exactly.
it's intertwined invertedly. So it's not necessarily about how you're doing at work that will improve your family and personal life, but rather how you're doing with your family and personal life that will
Oh, yeah.
improve your work.
Yeah, and that was a thing that took me a long time to like realize in college, and I tried so hard because I was like, okay, like, you know, there's not very much family here. Like, you know, there's personal life, there's buddies and stuff like that, but it's like, you know, it's not as fulfilling as being with your parents and loved ones. And so you try to force that good life from something that you're good at, and it's like, for me, I was like, I'm not really good at school, so if all my happiness is going to come from pole vault, I need to be good at pole vaulting. That'll make me happy. And all that led to was more underperforming and more unhappiness, you know?
How did you feel exactly, like, when you were underperforming and unhappy because of it?
Yeah, I mean, just like low self-worth. Like, I felt like, you know, maybe I wasn't all that I thought I was. You know, I thought I was good at pole vaulting. Maybe I needed to change my mind, and maybe I needed to switch my focus to school. And, you know, if I have this amazing opportunity to be at Cal educationally, I need to take it seriously and make that my whole thing. You know, if I'm not going to have as much athletic success as I thought I was.
I think a lot of people don't understand that this impact that it has on your confidence as an athlete and in your entire career also affects other aspects of your personal life.
Oh, yeah.
How did you see that it affected your confidence socially or anywhere else in your life?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like a low point. Like, you know, especially after like my first 3 collegiate seasons, I was like, will I ever be able to return to the level I was at? You know, and just luckily, I had met my girlfriend my 3rd collegiate season, and she helped me realize that a lot of my self-worth isn't from pole vaulting or performance-based. It's off of who I am and doing kind things for others. And I was able to have a more fulfilling life through all the things I could do outside of track and school, and that's what really helped me make a huge comeback.
What was it about realizing that about your self-worth? Like, what did you put into practice that made you realize, like, oh, I do have to be kinder? Because one thing is for somebody to tell you that,
Oh, yeah.
but in theory is one thing and practice is another. Theory is always great, but without the practice, it's worth not much.
Yeah.
So what changed for you, and when did you start noticing those different results? Not even athletically, just like realizing, like, wow, I'm enjoying the sport again. I feel better as a person, as an athlete, as a student athlete now.
Yeah, and that came from valuing my relationships with everybody. You know, even my teammates. Like, I'm sure you could go back and you could get, you know, the older people that were on the team back my first couple years, and be like, yeah, this guy, he's a fucking dick. Like he takes the sport way too seriously. You know, he's way too into it, and he's kind of an asshole. He's always trying to hold everybody accountable, and that's because I wanted to make sure everybody that was going to do the best that they could, so that our whole team could do the best they could. And then once I got past that point, and I realized that, like, hey, relationships are more important than anything else I have in my life. You know, the people I know and the people I talk to every day, and that's what's truly valuable. And, you know, being incredibly thankful for all the relationships I already have. You know, my loving parents, my amazing, you know, brothers and sisters, you know, my girlfriend, and my roommates that I've lived with, you know, throughout all of college. I've lived, the same person I lived my freshman year dorm with, I still live with today. And, like, being incredibly thankful for him being there for me always. And that shift to focusing on relationships and, you know, doing things for, you know, myself and for others, you know, and just general kindness led to such a more fulfilling life for myself.
I think, well, I mean, I know I can fully relate to what you're saying, especially I was with, there was, our alumni day happened a few weeks ago, and I was with some guys that were seniors when I was a freshman.
Oh, wow.
And they were like, you're the same guy, but you're completely different at the same time. And even, like, guys that were a class or two above me, and some of which I lived with my sophomore year coming back, they were seniors, they're their fifth year, so I was here with them for 3 semesters. And they could tell the difference. Even my friends now, within my own class, I was not as close with at all in the first 2-3 years of college. I changed a lot in my senior year, and it's exactly because of the same thing. I think there's that mentality of, like, being misunderstood, and I've gotten to meet many people here through the podcast, but even just in life, that are misunderstood. And I think it's definitely a quality that, not that you look for, but that it's important to have, because if you're not misunderstood, something's off. Whether you like it or not, you're going to be misunderstood if you're really pursuing something. With that being said, it doesn't mean you don't have to have friends. I think something that I noticed, and I'm projecting off of myself, but that I notice off of you, is I'm sure you value loyalty and close relationships, because you mentioned people you care about, but you mentioned 7 names, or not names, 7 people, 6-7 people.
Yeah.
And that's an important lesson right there, because you are going to be misunderstood. That doesn't mean you won't have relationships and friendships, but you'll be able to count them with one hand.
Yes.
And that's it. And that's how it works. But without those connections and relationships, if you're going to go off of the path of, I'm misunderstood, I'm not going to have any connection, any relationships, your life is also fucked, because to a certain extent, like what humans are, you require that connection. Without that connection, you are nothing in terms of finding a meaning in life. Whether we like to admit it or not, without the friendships, without any sort of relationship, you will struggle to find a meaning in life, because if not, it's a very lonely life, and a lonely life is not a sad life, but a life without meaning.
Yeah. And I mean, people are what makes sports so amazing. It's the fans, it's the teammates, it's the competitors, and without all of those people, then it's like, what am I really doing? I'm just jumping over another stick with a stick. You know, there's no meaning behind that, but it's the competition, it's the people watching, it's the coaching the other people, it's the inspiring the other people that make it all worthwhile.
My hot take with AI and everything that's going on there is that, yes, it's going to make us a lot more efficient in a lot of things, and it's a great piece of technology, but I don't think it's going to replace the human essence.
No way.
Because that's what keeps us going. Nobody is going to pay to watch a robot pole vault. I'm sure they could probably pole vault for 30 feet, 100 feet if they wanted to. Nobody's going to pay to watch that. Nobody's going to pay to watch 11 robots play soccer against 11 robots.
Exactly.
Because that's not the human essence.
And you can't relate to that.
You cannot relate to that. Exactly. You can't see them and be like, I want to be like that one day. No, you got to connect to them and what they're going through, the struggles, their success, dream of being able to match them. Yeah. Otherwise, there's no point.
Because that's what it is. AI is perfection, and humans are the exact opposite of that. And without imperfection, there's no way anybody can relate to you.
Many people will say like, "Oh, your perfection is your imperfection," and that's just such a bullshit phrase in my opinion. Yeah. But there's a certain truth to that. I think that what makes us so happy and keeps us going in life is that imperfection and Definitely. Finding the certain beauties and imperfection. Now, don't get me wrong, the imperfection that you loved yesterday, you can hate tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
And it's happened to me before plenty of times. But without those imperfections and either loving or hating them, it doesn't really keep you going. Because perfection with AI, very cool right now, but it gets so monotone that it doesn't change you up. And
it's not exciting.
It's not exciting at all.
Yeah.
It's good for certain things. It's going to make us so much more efficient. But for things that require human essence, I don't think so. I just saw, I don't know if you follow Casey Neistat's vlogs, but he just released one this week about the AI.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, yeah, like he made a vlog that was scripted by AI, and it's like, it was so boring because it just doesn't have that human value to it.
Oh, yeah.
Throughout those years, I mean, you said you learned about that relationship connection until your third year and applied it like this year. I know even just from reading, right, and watching, there's a huge leap in between your junior year and senior year of college.
Yeah.
With that being said, what was your sophomore year like and junior year like? I know your sophomore year was 2021 spring with COVID and everything, and you just described how it was, but how were those years for you performance-wise, but also confidence-wise, reflected off of your performance?
Yeah, I mean, my confidence with the sport was in a weird spot. I didn't really have previous years to back myself up with. Like, you know, it's like it wasn't like, oh, I did this last year, I can do it again, or I've done this last week, I can do it again, because it was like a full reset. And I went into that season, you know, I trained harder and harder than I ever had before, and you know, I didn't have as much human connection as I definitely needed, and so that led to me overtraining and getting, you know, slightly hurt, and I had to compete from a shorter run. Also, I had huge struggles with confidence going back to longer runs and going to bigger pulls that just like led to huge issues with the sport, and I had to compete from like a half run. You know, I was competing with a total of 8 steps was all I would take going into the jump. And I ended up jumping on the same poles I jumped on the previous year from half the run distance. So I had huge, you know, gains in my, you know, athletic capability, but I wasn't getting my performance goals. I was still only jumping 14 feet if I was lucky and no hiding at a bunch of meets. And luckily I got to compete with my brother and see him at one meet. And unfortunately we didn't know it was going to be the last meet we would ever compete against each other. But you know, we had a good time, and I think my brother ended up getting, I don't know if he won it. I think he might have won it, and I think I got third. But it was like, the whole meet was Cal State Long Beach, USC, and Washington State. And Cal State Long Beach has a pretty decent pole squad. I was the only guy vaulter at Cal at that time, and USC doesn't have pole at all. And Washington State had one really good guy, and who... He'll come back in later in the story because he's actually a really good guy, and but my brother had similar confidence issues and was also competing from short runs, and same with a lot of the other guys, except for that Washington State guy. And we remember we're like oh, we're on this short run. We were joking with the guys like, oh, you know, you got to come down to a shorter run and jump with us, you know, like and make it fair and stuff like that. And you know, we all jumped, and he ended up coming in at a much higher bar than us, and we're like, you know, he's going to take it for the win. I'm going to get fourth. My brother's going to get second. And he ended up no hiding. And so then my brother won it, and I got third. And so, like, I still remember that picture of me and my brother took together. Like, I think I ended up getting in trouble with it because, like, we didn't have masks on, and we were, like, touching each other. And I'm like, it's my fucking brother. Yeah. I'm going to take a picture with my brother. Like, I'm competing with my brother. We're both doing the thing we love. Like, we're taking a picture together. We take a picture, and I remember posting it, like, you know, first and third at this, like, small little meet, and it was like it was tons of fun. And that was actually my best meet that whole season because, you know, I was less worried about my performance and more focused on my relationships with my brother and stuff like that, and I had a ton of fun. And I continued to underperform that year, and it was frustrating. My season got cut short because I didn't get to travel to as many meets. You know, I didn't get to go to the Pac-12s. And obviously, I didn't qualify for regionals, and so there was no like nationals going to happen at all for me. And then I go into my junior year, and I finally get my first like real training partner. I'd been training with the girls because men's and women's track is combined, so we train together. But training with somebody who is actually, at the time he was better than me PR wise, and even today now we're tied. And so we know our capabilities are very similar. But he came in as a freshman, and instead of living in the dorms, I had him move into my apartment with me and two other guys on the team. And ever since that moment, we've gotten so incredibly close. And I had met him before and jumped against him in high school because he's from like Northern California area. And so at the pole vault summit my junior year after I signed to Cal, or my senior year after I signed to Cal, I'm walking in the lobby and this random dude comes up to me and goes, "Hey, I'm Brent Burns. Like, you're the Cal vaulter, right?" And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I don't really know who this guy is. And he goes, "I have the school record at Cal." I was like, "Oh, wow, this is amazing. Like the fact that I get to meet this guy." He goes, "Oh, I'm here with my son. He's jumping." I'm like, "Oh, like how high is he?" He's like, "Oh, he sucks." I still remember that. And then, I jumped against him at the Arcadia meet. I didn't make a bar that meet. I don't think he jumped very well either. And then at that state meet, my senior year, I jumped against him as well. But I had known the guy a little bit. We had crossed paths. He came on a visit, and I saw how much he cared about the sport. And then after we lived together, like we truly grew together a lot because we had a shared interest for the sport, like an incredibly shared interest. And it was the first time that, like you said, I was really understood by another person. Like all my madness was understood by this guy because he fully got it too. He understood like the desire to be a high performing athlete, especially in the sport of pole vaulting. And that was a big help to me. He helped me really shift a big focus. I didn't have the best season my junior year. I think that was actually, I consider that the worst season of my life. My entire indoor season, I did not clear a bar. I went to 3 meets and I made 0 bars. I think I know I did a total of like 6 or 7 times that whole season. And a lot of them were in a row. I think I only had 2 meets where I made a bar. I didn't get to go to Pac-12s. I didn't get to go to regionals. I didn't get to go to nationals. And that's where he came in a lot because he saw that I had the capabilities of jumping really high. I jumped on really big poles from a short run. I jumped on like similar poles that he was using from his long run from my short run. And so it was like, okay, he knew that I had potential, and like just him believing in me and his dad believing in me helped a tremendous amount because he talked to me and he's like, you need to get away from the performance aspect. You need to have fun again. You need to have fun again in this sport. And I remember he would go through his whole practice, and then at the end of practice when we would jump together, he would pick something super dumb that we would do, and it's like, oh, like let's do straight pole, like where the pole doesn't bend, or like let's do a super short approach and like let's try and jump a different way, or like a funny way. Like let's find fun again in this sport that you do, because he knew that I loved the sport, but he could tell that my focus was in the wrong spot. And so he helped me find a joy again in the sport of jumping, even though I wasn't getting the performance I wanted. And then over that summer, we trained together, and even into that off season. And that's when we started posting videos a bunch again, because, we had talked about it, and like he had only jumped 17. He jumped 17 feet his freshman year, and he got close to breaking the freshman record. And we were both sitting there that summer, and we were talking about how, our dreams of being professionals in the sport. And we were like, we should do it. We should make a conscious effort. Like, let's get to that level. Let's get to the professional level. And a big thing about pole vaulting is that a lot of people is like, well, pole vaulters don't make a whole lot of money unless you're the number one guy. And which is true, but there are some other people who are nowhere near the best guy who make a lot of money because they branded themselves right. And they, were able to have a huge platform, get a lot of better deals because, they were socially more popular in the sport. And so a lot of people wanted to see them compete. And so we were like, okay, well, first thing we got to do is we got to do what we can with what we have, and let's try and build a social media presence. And so that's when we started posting our training videos. And we kind of created this idea because we were always like, well, we had only posted like our best jumps. That's all we would ever post, because it's like we want to show everybody else that we're doing good as well. And then we kind of have like a realization. It's like, okay, of the people who follow me or even watch my videos, probably maybe 1 to 3% actually know all the details about pole vaulting. And that was a huge realization to us, because it was like, I could go and put the bar at 12 feet and clear it by 4 feet. And most people on social media don't know. They don't care. They see me doing it and they're like, cool, this guy's pole vaulting. Even though another pole vaulter would be like, this guy's not really pole vaulting. He's not jumping anywhere near high. And so we just started posting a bunch of like, them videos of us jumping low, or, like these small little edits. And we got a lot of traction with that. And then it was like, hey, this is like kind of like a thing. We could become popular on social media and create a platform, even though we haven't jumped as high. And like, at the time, I still hadn't PR'd since that junior year of high school. I hadn't even jumped 16 feet yet, and then that led into this off season, like the off season before this year, where we were posting training videos and we were jumping all the time and we were having a ton of fun. And for the first time ever, I was able to progress really well, because I've had such support through my relationships with teammates and my coach. And then we noticed that things started to get way better. I jumped higher on the same poles, and I have been able to go to bigger poles I had never used before, and I was able to go to a longer run finally again, confidence-wise and optics-wise, because I was faster. It's a little bit harder to run faster and still be able to time up everything. And so I was like, oh my God, like things are starting to get a lot better, and we're starting to do better both together, to the point where like I was jumping over 16 feet in practice from a short run, and I'd never made 16 feet in my life. And then I started jumping on 5-meter poles, from my like 5 left, which was like a big deal, because a lot of people, hadn't jumped on 5-meter poles from their long run. And my teammate, he'd only been able to jump on them from his long run. And so I was like holding high on them, like, and jumping from a short run. And that's when we realized, like, oh my God, we could take jumps at like 17 feet in practice from a short run. And we were both doing this together. And we're like, oh my God, like this is crazy. But I had 3 horrible seasons, and especially last year being my worst. There's no way they're going to take me to the indoor meets. And I talked to my coach a little bit about it, and it's like, you got to get a mark if we're going to take you to indoor. We got to see that you're capable. So he was talking about this meet. It's like a Halloween vault. It's like a little holiday vault over in San Francisco. And we reached out to the guy, we talked to him, and he's like, yeah, sure, we'd love to have you guys here for it. I figure out all the like transportation to get there. We get a ride from like this guy who's a coach that coached my teammate's dad when he was back when he was pro, because I forgot to add that part, but like Tyler, who's my training partner, his dad was the school record holder, but then he actually went professional after. So he drove us to the meet, and like with our pole bag, and we ended up jumping. I ended up jumping in the meet by myself, and I got there, and it was like, okay, my PR is still 15:10, but I'm jumping at like 17 feet all the time in practice. Like, I don't even know where to start. Like, where do I start the bar? Do I jump at 15.6? Like that's a ton of bars to clear through. And we decided to open at like a 2-centimeter PR or something like that. And so I opened at like 485, which is like basically 15.11 or something like that. And I was jumping on huge poles, and I had to wait until the whole end of the meet to jump, because a lot of these guys are just high school kids and club kids. And I make 485, and I was totally unfazed. I was like, okay, like we have way bigger sights set right now. I gotta stay focused on continuing to perform. And it was, I jumped 485, then I jumped 505, and then I jumped 515. And then because this is a high school, the standards only go to 17 feet, which is like 5.2 meters. And so I'm like, okay, let's push it as high as it can possibly go, because I'm fine with 515. I'm already jumped high enough to travel again. I'm super stoked. Let's put it at 525, which is higher than Tyler's PR at the time. He jumped 521 the previous season. I'm like, all right, let's kind of just do it, to just try it. I have one close jump at it, and then my second jump I make it. I totally couldn't believe it. That was the first time I truly PR'd again, and ever since I was a junior, and I hadn't had that feeling in so incredibly long, and it was amazing. Like the videos on my Instagram, and it was tagged at the top of my Instagram for a long time, like me jumping up and screaming. I was no fucking way, and Tyler runs over and we hug each other when we were jumping around, and we were so incredibly stoked, and from then it just was like, all right, this is a real deal. We're gonna do some serious shit with this sport. And then that led to the beginning of, the season of my lifetime, which of course had to follow after the worst season of my life.
Yeah.
Which I'm still going through right now.
Yeah, and it's crazy that you're still living through that right now, and there's still so much left to experience and even talk about now, because that's a PR, and you've improved on that PR. I'm not sure if it's multiple times, but I know what the height difference is, and it's quite a lot, especially in comparison to your previous PRs. But you look at this, and there's 3 key factors, in my opinion, right? The first one is the fun aspect.
Definitely.
What do you think is the biggest change, or if anybody is going through something where they don't enjoy it anymore, they have a passion but they can't find the fun in it anymore, it's only their job, it's their work, what do you think people would have to do, from your piece of advice, from your perspective, to find fun again?
Yeah, I mean, it's you take what you like to do and find the niche part of it that you really like, and go back down to the basics and make sure that the focus of the day is to have fun and build off of that. It's like, okay, it'd be really fun if we tried this funny little thing, and then it's like, okay, but everybody really knows that the fun lies in jumping really high. And so then it's like, okay, what if we tried to jump, we don't have to jump incredibly high, but we jump mediocrely high, but we do it from a shorter run, or we try to do it on a smaller pole. And we try all these little things, and it's about approaching it from all angles, angles you haven't even tried before, to be like, okay, it could be more fun if we do it this way. Let's try and do it that way.
Very nice. And the second one is your teammate, right? And we talked about this from the very beginning. Having people that are like-minded, inevitably is going to push you.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioning, even though he's younger, that's irrelevant.
Well, he's technically older than me, but he is younger than me in school.
Got it. So how do I phrase this? Regardless of what stage in your career you guys are at, is he international, or what's the situation?
No, he's younger, or not younger. He's we were the same year in middle school. He just took gap years.
Ah, okay. Regardless of that, it's always good to have somebody else there. It's, to me, from an outsider point of view, it's not shocking that you struggled. That you struggled your first couple of years, and then the year that you have a training partner, things start to change. No shit.
Yeah.
You need somebody else to compete with, that pushes you, to show you what's possible. If he wasn't jumping, I think you said 522.
21.
21.
Yeah, which is 17 something. Yeah.
If he's not jumping 521 and you're not competing there with him, what makes you think that you are going to be able to do that after having the worst season of your life?
Oh yeah.
You need to have somebody there all the time to compete with, but to push you in that process, which is awesome. And the last piece that just blows it all away is the social media. It's super interesting, not only from you, but I've seen it as well. I'm close to Cameron Rogers, but I've seen it a lot with Anna Purchase as well.
She's really good at posting stuff. Yeah.
They're so good at it, especially Anna is the one that's recording and that knows how to do that really well. But it's important. It's an important piece of any athlete in today's NIL world, but especially in track, in my opinion. How you phrase it is perfect. You need to brand yourself in a different way. Unless you're Mondo, then you gotta brand yourself in a different way. It's just, for him, of course the attention is gonna be there and it's gonna work out, but for everybody else, what's going to make you different? And I think what you describe is hilarious, how you're jumping over just 12 feet. It's funny. But nobody notices. I
Yeah.
can't tell the fucking difference. Like,
Exactly.
now I'm gonna pay attention to it, but unless you like, if you didn't tell me, I wouldn't have noticed. And it's like,
Yeah.
wow, like this guy knows what he's doing. And even then, it's what, a 5-second video, 10-second video max.
yeah.
Like, it doesn't make that big of a difference. So to have that point of view is very important and impressive that you had the initiative to do that, because again, if you want to make it to the next level, you for sure need to do that. And if for some reason that doesn't work out, you still have something there where you can continue pole vaulting and make something out of that.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah, and that is the other thing about pole vault, to kind of segue, is like, once a lot of people go is like, once you jump 16 feet, that's when you stop having the like 1 foot PRs in a year. Like, that stuff stops happening, and a lot of people talk about it. It's like, and then once you jump 17 feet, like a good year is you PR'd by 6 inches and you jump 17.6. Because a lot of people, this is when a lot of people stagnate and their plateau begins at 16 and 17 feet. And for me and Tyler, we jumped 17. Like, he jumped it his first year, and his, like, I had jumped it that off season, and then we go to the pole vault summit again, and it was a whole different ordeal. Like, so many people were coming up to us. Oh my God! Like, I see you guys' videos on Instagram all the time. Like, can I take a picture with you? Like, will you follow me back? Like, stuff like that. And I was like I had really no idea. Like I only had a couple. I had like just over 1,000 followers at the time then, and like now I'm at like 2,000 something. And it's like that's a lot of people, and a lot of them are pole vaulters in America, and they all just happen to be in the same place now. And so, like, that is a whole different thing. And then, at the pole vault summit, I ended up jumping 5:15. I didn't jump 17 feet. I jumped like 16:10, just below it. And Tyler jumped like 16:8 or something like that, like very close. And like, we were like unsatisfied with that meet, but like, I remember my coach was like he was secretly super stoked, because he's like, oh my God, like, I just had 2 guys jump like, over 5 meters, and before I had like 1 guy who was jumping 17 feet occasionally, and now I have 2 guys that are getting really close. And then we go and open our first indoor meet for Cal, and we both jumped, I think it was 5:23 or something like that, or maybe it was 27. I think it was 27.
So 2 PRs.
We both PR'd, and I remember it because it was like to my coach's perspective, he had 1 guy who had occasionally jumped 17 feet outdoors. He hadn't jumped it indoors yet, and then me, who was just like fully kind of just like a joke. And we show up to the meet, and we go, 1-2 of collegiate athletes, because there's professionals competing in the meet as well. And like, all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, like, Cal's back on the map. Like, coaches are going up to my coach, oh, what did you guys do differently? What did you do differently? Like, how did you get Skyler to where he was? Like, I remember last year he was, not making any bars, or if he was, it was incredibly low and having a bunch of issues. And now he's performing well. And then we come back to Albuquerque again for another indoor meet, this is a great facility to jump at. And we jump there, and we both jump 5:34, which is, that's another PR by a couple centimeters. And so that's around like 17.6. And like, most people, they go from 17 to 17.6 in 1 whole year. They're stoked. We're like, that's just like 1 week after the other. And we're making these PRs, and like, this whole time, we're like, our goals set so much higher than this, that it's like, we're making the PR, it's like, yeah, we're accepting, it's like, yeah, we did good, but we know we can do better. And then it came to that 3rd meet, which unfortunately I had a hamstring injury after that 2nd meet. I showed up to Monday practice, and when I was jumping, it just pulled up on me, and I was like, oh my God, I'm totally screwed. I'm trying to qualify for indoor nationals. And to qualify, you have to jump like 550 something. And we had taken attempts at our first 2 meets, and we're like, we know we're so capable of qualifying and going. And I get this injury, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to be able to do it in time. I have 2 weeks until my last chance to qualify. And so I take time off. I'm doing all the recovery I can. I'm doing everything I can train without using my leg, and all that stuff. And we show up to this last meet. It's Pac-12 indoors, so it's like, Pac-12 doesn't recognize indoor track and field as a sport yet for some reason. So before we were MPSF, which is like, that's what like water polo was in. And so this is like my first time going to like a Pac-12 kind of meet. And so all the Pac-12 guys are there. And, a lot of those guys, had ended up jumping pretty high. And like one of them had jumped, 550 something. Like I think two of them had jumped 550 something. And, I show up at the meet, and me and Tyler, like, we open higher. We ended up opening at 520, which is 17 feet. We open, like that's our starting bar. And we make that bar, and because I'm hurt, I can't jump a whole lot. So I jump that bar and make it on my third attempt, and I'm already like, oh, come on, I need to not be taking jumps. And I already take 3 jumps at one bar. And so then I pass 30, because I think it was 23 to 33 or 22 to 32. I passed 32 to 43. Yeah, I think it was like threes. I jump at 43, and Tyler makes 33, and he makes 17 on his first jump. And then on our third attempts at this bar, I think 2 of the Stanford guys make it. And it's me and the Cal guy versus the 2 Stanford guys now. The Washington guy, he got out earlier and who had jumped 18 feet. And so it's like, I got to make this bar. And I get up over it. I jump 543. And unfortunately, Tyler didn't make it. But then, when it goes and looks at the drop back, I skip that second height. So I don't have as many misses as one of the guys, and ended up getting second at the conference meet.
Wow.
And I was like, this is incredible, because I had never been to a conference meet. And now I'm second at the conference meet.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy to think that
and I jumped the same bar as first place. I just had a couple more misses than him. Yeah.
Especially because it's senior year and you've never been to conference.
Yeah.
And now you're second place.
Yeah.
And you have what it takes to compete with first place. And you were injured.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is that feeling like? What goes through your head when that happens?
I mean, first of all, there was a big celebration for me when I made 43, because not only it was a PR, but then I knew I got a chance to take jumps at the national qualifier. And so I was like super stoked. I'm hurt. I made the bar. I'm back in the competition. And it was crazy because I had celebrated that PR more than I had celebrated all my other PRs.
Yeah.
Besides like when I jumped 520 in October. So I was like it was super crazy. And then I had 3 good jumps at it, but I got caught up in being too excited and trying too hard. And if I had just stayed calm, I would have made the bar. I brought too much energy into it, and I still remember that because my leg hurt, and I remember all those jumps at 553. My leg didn't hurt at all. I was fully in the game. There was nothing else going on, and so after I've missed my final jump at 53, I'm walking off the runway, and then my leg fully gives out underneath me, and I'm like, I fall onto the bench. I'm like, oh God, it's going to be interesting trying to recover from this. Like, I was like, this is going to be tough, which was crazy because, I had that hamstring pain for 2 weeks, and then I go and compete and I just absolutely abuse it. And then I wake up Sunday morning after competing, my leg doesn't hurt at all. I was fully blown away. I was like, what is it? Like, my leg doesn't hurt at all. It's like I had like a little bit of just like tightness, but I'm always tight after a meet. And then I show up Monday and I train and I go, my leg is fully healed. And that's where an exact moment, and where in previous times when I was injured and I had not pushed through a mental aspect of it, I had let the injury win over me. And for the first time I had really stepped down and like accepted it's like, okay, this injury is bad, but it's not going to get worse. Like, pole vaulting isn't going to make it worse. It's going to hurt while I pole vault. And once I got over that mental aspect, it was like I was able to compete. I PR'd, and then all of a sudden I'm fully healed, which was insane to me.
That's a very interesting story and situation there. It ties in with soreness in general, right? Like, the easiest way to lose soreness is to keep on training and repeating and hitting those workouts. It's interesting how weird it sounds, because it's like, well, no, if you're sore, you need to take time off. No, if you actually continue to get your reps in, it'll feel normal in the process. You'll be sore after, but eventually your body will catch up and you'll be fine. I'm not a scientific expert whatsoever. Like, this is not advice you should take from me, but it just is. It is the case. It's like you can go out and try it, and that's just how it feels. And it's super interesting that happened to you. I was gonna ask, like, are you still injured or what happened?
No, like I've been basically fine on the hamstring front ever since then, and it's like it was interesting because there was definitely parts of my career where I was like, okay, like I'm injured in this certain way, and I tried to train through it, and it's like, all right, congratulations, you just made it way worse. But it was more of just the mental aspect, overcoming the mental aspect, instead of just like just throwing everything I have at it. And it was just approaching it smarter rather than harder, which led to it working out a lot better.
When you're pole vaulting, how much do you think in that runway process? I'm assuming there's about 5 seconds or so before you're fully jumping.
Yeah, I mean it feels like forever while you're doing it, obviously, but I run from like 100 something feet, and so I'm running on the runway, and in reality, the only thing you can think about is like maybe one or two things. And it's like you can pick one thing in the run to focus about and one thing in the jump to focus about. Because there's no way you're going to be able to think about 10 different things. You're just going to end up confusing yourself. And a lot of it comes down to muscle memory. The same way with like a gymnast, doing a certain skill where they're like, I'm not actively trying to do all these things. It's like I've just been, adding each piece, and then it just all connects together. And it leads to me, doing it all. And then obviously if they have an issue with one part, they focus on that one part,
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting how even with muscle memory, it's such a beautiful thing how, again, the repetitions and just go, and it just ends up not working out, but you don't even have to think about it anymore. It's so much repetition. Again, going back to all the meets you've done in your life, all the practices where you cleared 17 that you weren't even phased when you finally hit your PR at, 15:11 or something like that.
Yeah.
And now it's like, wow, like look what I can push myself through and what I can accomplish, and this feeling going away because of those repetitions.
Yeah, and so me and Tyler finished just shy of qualifying for nationals that year, which obviously we were bummed because we felt like we could have been competitive at that stage, and so then we reset and we had our outdoor opener in San Diego. There was a couple other meets, but we didn't choose to open in those. We wanted to take more time to adjust to new things, and so that indoor season I was still competing from like a 3/4 run too. I was doing like 6 lefts, which is like 12 steps total, and now I'm back at 16 steps. So I made that adjustment. I went to 16 steps, but I also made a huge adjustment. I went to poles that are 10 centimeters longer, which at that point, Cal didn't have any of those poles, which was kind of annoying because I had two, my dad had 2 of them, and they luckily lined up with the end of our 5-meter poles. So I was like, okay, like, I tried them out, which like, luckily, like, my confidence is so much in a better space where trying longer poles is like no big deal. And trying any bigger pole is no big deal to me now, which is incredible for, exceeding and like, what I thought I could do and continuing to perform better. But yeah, so Cal didn't have any of those poles. I bring up 2 poles from home to use, and these poles are old. They're like I think one of them's from 1980 something. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of the poles that we use are pretty old because they're a really good product, and they last really long. This specific brand is known for, them lasting really long, and we took a lot of them to the factory. The factory's in Nevada, and because we're close with the guys, and they ended up putting them in this giant machine that just fully bends them in a cage to like see if they're not going to break. They all passed like the flex test, and they all like were test rated the same, so they're all the same as a new pole that they would make today. So like I had 2 of those poles, and luckily when we were at the pole vault summit, my coach had met a guy who was from the Bay Area, who he had only jumped like 17 something, but he was 6'6", 250 pounds. So he was like way bigger than me, because like I'm 6'5", 175-ish, so he is like, he makes me look like a kid. And he goes, I got all my old poles, sitting at Los Gatos High School. And so we drove and picked up all these poles, and they're huge. And luckily, like, Cal only had to buy a few poles to bridge the gap between all those poles, but I have a ton of poles that will line me up to jump really high now, which I'm like super thankful for that. And so I made the adjustment to longer poles, which was like, it's a big deal, not only for myself, because it's like I just started jumping on 5 meter poles this year, and now I'm jumping on 5'10s, and like the guy who sets the world record, Mondo, he jumps on like a 525 pole, and there had been people who had jumped world records on 5'10 poles, and most of professional athletes use 5'10 poles currently. And so it was like, I'm getting to like the big leagues, at least pole wise, and I had already been jumping on like bigger poles than a lot of people that I was competing against. And so like now that I went to longer run, and so now I'm on longer poles and stiffer poles, like I was using poles that like we had a guy come from Norway who was, because the world championship was in Oregon, he came and trained at Berkeley, and the biggest pole he had ever used was like a 5'10 14.3 flex, which is like how much it bends down, right? And the two poles that I had from my dad was a 15.0 and a 14.2, and usually you want to go like 0.5 until like 0.5 of every gap until you get to like your biggest poles, and you want to go like 0.3 or 0.2. So like that's like a 0.8 gap, which I luckily was able to cover, but like at that point I realized I had jumped on a bigger pole than a guy that had jumped 19 plus feet. I mean, obviously, like I weighed more than him, but I was like, I'm definitely moving in the right direction to jump like way higher. And like I've even jumped on all the way down to like a 13.0 flex now, which I'm like, it's like fully insane, because I go to meets and like it's almost like a guarantee that I'm on like the biggest pole out of everybody there. Yeah, I don't jump as high yet, but it's the right direction for sure for myself. And so like that was like a big adjustment I had to make. And so my first two outdoor meets, I was still adjusting to these longer poles and not knowing what to do with them all, and like, because like this is like uncovered ground for like my coach, for me, for my dad, for a lot of people. Like the only people that I personally know that had jumped on those poles that long was Tyler's dad, and that was like back in the 90s. And so he's like, oh yeah, like I just switched them, and then I just immediately started jumping higher, and then I was like, oh, it sounds good to me. I'm gonna do that. And I struggled my first couple meets, which was interesting, because like that first San Diego meet, I jumped 535 still, and it's funny because I say I struggled because it's like, that was my second highest mark I'd ever cleared, but I was like, it wasn't 18 feet. I'm on a longer run on bigger poles. I take jumps at 18.6, 19 feet in practice all the time. I should be able to make this. And luckily Tyler had made 555 at that meet, which ranked him number one in the nation, and this was like 3 weeks in, so it was still kind of early, but it's a big deal. Like there was other guys who had jumped 50 plus that, and that was previously number one, and he had passed them. And so he stayed, pretty high in the rankings for a while. And that was crazy. That was a huge breakout for him, after not getting the bar he wanted at, obviously at indoor Pac-12s, but also, like at other meets, like, yeah, like we were succeeding, but it was like, he was wanting to jump higher, and he was able to do that. And then unfortunately we had a kind of a hiccup at Texas relays, with just crazy weather, super humid, windy, like nothing we'd ever been in. I'd never been to Texas before, and then it was like stormy weather. So I was like, I've never pole vaulted in weather like this. And that was the first meet I opened at 5:30, which is like 17.5-ish. And my PR was 5:43. But like, even still, like it was obvious that I could open that high because I was making it by that much. And we were originally planning on opening at like 5:16, and the bars go up like every 15 centimeters. And so we were in at 5:16, and then the weather had gotten better because it was raining a little bit at the beginning. So we're like, all right, let's make this adjustment. Let's move to the higher bar. And we both go over to tell the official that we want to jump at the higher bar to start. And Tyler goes over there and he's like, yeah, I'd like to go to I'd like to pass the next bar. And they're like, you can't do that. He's like, what do you mean I can do that? He goes, you're up. And he's like, what? He's like, there's 30 seconds on the clock. You've been up for 30 seconds already. He's like, what? And he's fully in his rain gear, in his warm-ups. He hasn't jumped in like a little bit. And so he's like, he takes all his stuff off and he goes and grabs a random pole out of his bag and runs down the runway and jumps. He didn't make the bar, but on that first jump, but it was insane. Just like having to be up and having 20 seconds to get everything ready to go and run down the runway to jump.
Yeah, what the hell?
Yeah, and at Texas they take pole and officiating the meet super seriously. So they're like, because when that time goes up, that's a miss. You didn't attempt the bar, and luckily he made that bar, and then he passed 31 and went straight to 41.
Okay.
And so I opened at 31. I made that one on my third try as I was still figuring out newer poles. Some poles were too soft, and then we both jump at 40, and I have huge height on it, and Tyler has height on it. And we both miss it, and we're like, what the heck? Because Tyler just jumped 18 feet the previous meet, and I was like, I'm ready to do it this meet, at a facility that is a lot of people jump really high at, and I was just like, at a moment where I'm like, gosh, we're underperforming again. I went and got my fourth best mark of my life, and
that's the craziest part, and I don't want to let that fly by, and I'm sorry I interrupted you there,
fine.
But we can't overlook this, and this happens in all standards of life. Let's say we take a graph of where you were your freshman year of college, not even when you started, freshman year of college, and now competing right now, and you look at 543, were you mentioning something like that?
Yeah, indoors, yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is a bad meet. What the hell?
Yeah.
Look at the 4-year graph. Imagine it. And right here, you weren't even attempting that. And the fact that right next to it, you're like, damn, this is a bad meet. In the long run, that's even your fourth best mark in a meet, right? That's an incredible height.
I still remember it because because our goal is so much higher and we're constantly trying to be better. It's like I remember talking to Coach Mo, which is who coaches Cameron, and he knows a little bit about pole vault. And I remember walking away from me, and he's like, "What did you jump?" I was like, "Oh, I opened at 31. That's all I made." He's like, "Think about it, man. You could take yourself any other year that you were alive, and you told yourself you jumped 531, you'd probably be shitting yourself right now." Yeah. And I'm like, "That's true," And so it was easier to take the loss, not getting what we want, and I felt like it was necessary for us to, like you say, stay down in that moment and realize, okay, we're not getting what we want, we're not performing where we should be performing, and kind of sitting in that moment so we can feel it. But then it was you got to move on so you can start working on the next meet. And so that was a thing we kind of set up. It's if we do bad at a meet, you got till the end of the day, we wake up as a new person the next day, and we're already focusing on the next meet.
Yeah, and that's what sucks with that feeling, how you look for that so long, you work for that, and the feeling comes, but as soon as you wake up the next morning, you go again, and it's you've been trying to get to even, what Coach Mo said, you would have been shitting yourself, but as soon as you get there, as soon as you've already tasted it, it's well,
it's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing anymore because I've already tried it. I'm looking for something new, and once I reach something new, I want something newer. Once I have something better, I want the best. And it's a continuous cycle that many people don't realize. And it's healthy to have that mindset to keep moving forward. But let's say you'd be frustrated in that stage and you would have been pissed off. It's look how far you've come in how short amount of time.
Yeah.
It's not something I wish upon you, but by looking at where your career has gone, at some point in the future, it could be near future or long future, you're going to have a downslope again. And you have to know that. You have to know that looking at the tracks of your career, it's going to happen. Where maybe you'll even struggle to reach 530, which is your opening right now, or it was in Texas.
Yeah.
Just for a little bit of time, it's just how it works. It's up and down and up and down. But the lower you reach at a certain point, the higher the bounce back is.
Yeah, and I think one of our biggest aspects that we always focus on is being able to overcome those down parts, the lulls of performance, and because that's what it's all about. It's about getting through that part. That's what helps you perform better. So we focus heavily on the mental side of everything, to be able to, because obviously if I left every meet, no matter how I did, and it was I did good because I had fun. It's okay, you'll have a lot of fun, but you're not gonna increase performance because you're happy with whether if you jump 530 or 540. You got to be more happier when you jump higher, and you got to be less happier when you jump lower. but you don't need to own it as who you are. You own it for a day and you move on.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. I want to be respectful. I do have a few things that I still want to close out, but I did just look at the time, and I don't know what you have at 10.
We'll be fine. We can go over.
Cool.
I'll be fine.
All right, yeah. Oh, can you see it?
Yeah,
right now?
I can see it.
Okay, cool. I just looked and I'm like, oh shit. I want to be
we'll be fine. It's like, it's not. It's like, you know how cal classes can be sometimes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't training, and in my head I was like, fuck. If he has to run to training, doesn't warm up, and something happens, I didn't want this to be the reason.
Just and even if it was training, I could just. My coach is so flexible with stuff like that. He's like, because like obviously we're not like a big team where it's like everybody has to train at the same time. It's like training at 11 is 4 guys, and like those 3 guys could still jump, and then I could just hop in at another session later on in the day.
Okay. Just wanted to be respectful of it. For context, we started recording at, what was it, like 7:20? Yeah, 7:20, 7:30, and
I'm having fun. I time's flying.
Me too. I mean, I didn't even notice it until I looked over to get my glass. But it's the context I bring up, as well as we'll still talk about this and transition into a couple other things. But something that was interesting to me is the waking up early aspect that you mentioned. When we were planning this out, and I just messaged you. You said you wake up every day at around 6 a.m.? Yeah,
I try to have consistent, wake up times and sleep times, because sleep has been like a huge thing for, against injury and helping me train and perform better. So like I try to be like in bed really early at night. Like,
are you very strict with the times and everything?
Yeah, like basically everybody in my household, it's like once it gets to like 9 o'clock, like things start to wind down, like the lights aren't on. And then like by the time it hits like 10, everybody's in their rooms and most likely asleep.
Are you strict about like anything else, like nerdy wise with sleep? For example, like for me, I like would wear my Apple Watch and have this app, and it tracks me and like my heart rate and all these different things. When I was like really into my sleep right now, I'm not into that phase right now, but I'm sure in the future I will.
Yeah, because I struggled with sleep a lot. So I got like a Whoop watch. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No.
But it's a similar thing where it tracks your sleep, and it also tracks your strain, and so it tells you how much sleep you need to get. And it's like before, it's like everybody's like, oh, you only need 8 hours of sleep, and it's like, well, that's for like a normal person. Like in reality, like an athlete, they need an additional hour of sleep depending on how hard you trained that day, and how much sleep you've gotten the previous day, because like sleep debt and stuff like that. And so, like I was a person that it's like it didn't matter what time I went to bed. If the sun rises, I'm fully awake. And it was something I hated about myself. But I was like, because then I'm just like, I'm up and I can't go back to sleep and I'm tired for like a couple hours. And it's like, okay, what if I go to bed earlier and earlier and earlier? And I end up waking up at the same time. And so it's like, okay, if I'm already just going to be waking up super early, if I go to bed earlier, then I can be fully awake at that time. And then I have this huge amount of productive time in the morning where it's like, there is no distractions, Like even if you went on social media, you could scroll through everything because, you probably scrolled through the night before. You're like, there's nothing even on here. Like nobody's posting stories. It's, it's 7 a.m. The only thing you have to do, like a lot of times, roommates aren't up yet. It's like you can't even go and socialize with them. All you have to do is like homework and, be productive. That's the only option.
Do you have any habits that you do like with your morning routine or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like the first thing I do when I wake up is I eat food because I take food super seriously as well as with my sleep, and so like I'll make breakfast, I'll sit down, I'll eat breakfast, and I'll take all my vitamins and some whatever supplements I take. But besides that, like the routines lie more based off of the timing of practice and stuff like that, because I know that because I have to compete at different times, so it's like I always want to be flexible. I don't ever want to get in a routine where it's like, okay, I'm always ready at 2 p.m. to pole vault, because then it's like, okay, what if we go somewhere and there's a time change and you're vaulting at 11 a.m. there, but it's actually like 5 a.m. in California, or you're jumping in, it's like 10 p.m. in California, but it's actually like 6 o'clock.
Wherever it is, yeah.
Yeah, and so like, a huge flexibility on like timing and stuff like that. And so it's like, I have like a routine that I start, 2 hours before practice that involves like, eating another meal. Like even if it's like I ate breakfast, I'll eat that other meal 2 hours before practice. And I always eat like a consistent meal. And then I start taking, 15 minutes before I start, I'll take some supplements as well. That'll help me, get through training. And then obviously just like routines within the sport, as well, like certain things I do to warm up and stuff like that to help get in a good mental space and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting because my biggest issue is that I'm extremely strict with my routines, where if I even mess up, it like throws everything else off. And that's an issue I've been dealing with my entire life. But what I really appreciated from what you said is that it has no specific time, so that you're flexible to adjust, and it's super important to be able to do that. With like recordings and stuff like that, which is like my game now, right? Like with soccer, I had my own routine. Same thing goes into this. Like, all right, I throw everything there. I set this up, and then I get to it, and it doesn't matter what time it is. But with other things, oh my God, especially in the morning, like to work out or something, it's like if it's not at this specific time or if it's not done this way, it just throws me off.
Oh yeah, because it's like not very many people are like 7:15. Could you imagine? It's like, hey, you want to get up before 7:15 and then have a conversation with somebody for a whole hour? Like a lot of people are like, there's no way I could do that.
I'll be completely honest. This is the earliest podcast I've ever recorded. Yeah, I mean, I just don't know who else would have done it. And it's funny, like, again, another thing that was funny, when I messaged you, I gave you the address, and you're like, oh, I live down the street.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that it's this early, I have no issue with it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm up anyways. But yeah, very, very interesting with those those things. Going back, up until this point, we've talked about 5:53. You're at 5:55 now.
Oh yeah.
What's been going on?
So like, we had those first two meets, and then Tyler got really sick after Texas. Like, he got something from traveling, or because that's somebody always gets something from traveling, and so unfortunately he wasn't able to compete at the home meet that we hosted. And it's like, okay, going to be at home, the weather's going to be halfway decent, and we'll have some decent competition because the Stanford guys will be there. And both of those guys have jumped 550 plus before. One of them jumped 556 indoors, and one of them jumped 550 over the summer. And they're like, we're really close with them. They're amazing guys, and like they come from pole vault families as well. And one of them's from SoCal, so like I know him very well. And
the pole vaulting community is very close.
Yeah, super tight knit. And so I'm like, okay, this is still big meet for me, big opportunity. And so of course it's at home, so I get to set the bar progression, and so I set the bar progression so I can take jumps at 72, 572, and then 582, which 72 will be a school record, and then 82 is the Olympic A standard / world champion A standard. So it's like, okay, like that's the goal, is to be able to jump at those bars. And so, I'll open at 27, and then I'll go straight to 52 after that, which is like, that's a huge
hell?
Jump. Yeah. And so the Stanford guys, they come in at like 480 something, like less than 5 meters, like 480. I think one of them came in at 505 or something like that, or whatever, something around there. And then it turned out, so the bar goes to 527, which is my opening bar. I hadn't jumped in like probably an hour and 3/4 because I've just been waiting for the bar to get to my height. And I think I might have been the first one up. Or no, I think I was the last one up. They put me in the back of the order, even though because I was tied with the other Stanford guy from indoor. He also jumped 43 was his PR. So we were tied, but after like alphabetically or something like that. And so they both jump at it and they both miss it. I'm like, this is an opportunity to put myself in first. If I make this first bar, make this bar on my first try, I'm in first, and it doesn't matter. Like, and it's good for the rest of the meet. I make that first try. I'm like, all right, I'm stoked. I'm ready to go. I'm amped up to go to the next bar. And then they both miss it, which was like kind of disappointing because like, I feel bad for the guys because I want them to do well because I want my competitors to do just as well as me, so that way they'll continue to push me. And so like, a little off meet for them. But after that, I was like, okay, I missed 27. Let's go straight to 52. I come down 52 and I put huge height on it, and I just like tucked my knees into it because I thought I was much closer to the bar than I was, so I tried to tuck my feet underneath it to rotate around it. I ended up getting up on it, tucking my feet, and then my knees landing on the bar because I was like over a foot over the bar. I was like, oh my God, that's insane. And so I was like, and then I come down and I just make it on my second try like it was like nothing. I was like, all right, sweet. I made 50 plus. I'm ready to go, and then I moved the bar up to 572.
Wow.
which would be a school record. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a big bar, for sure. Because like at that point in competitions and like in where they have bar progressions, like most bars go up by 15, and once you get past like 30, it goes up by like 10. And then once you get past like 50 or like 60, it goes by 5 centimeters. Yeah. And I just passed by 20 centimeters. And like which was crazy because like I still had decent jumps at it, because I just like I know that I'm capable of jumping higher than that, and I just I took the jumps at it because it's like I had competed two meets in a row, and I wanted to not take a lot of jumps at this meet, so I took one jump at my opening bar, 2 jumps at the second bar. I'm just 3 jumps in. It's like, okay, I only want to take 3 more jumps. That way I can save myself for the next meet, which is a bigger invitational. So I put it all the way up there, and from dreaming big, it created an opportunity to fail big, and like not make the bar, and have some bad misses at it and some good misses at it where I was close. But from that, I was able to learn a lot about what I needed to fix. Okay, in order to jump 72, I have to be, more back on the pole, and I have to focus on going up rather than up and away, and it's going to take longer to jump that higher. And so it's like, okay, like I have to make these adjustments so I can jump higher. And so that's what I was able to train on. It gave me something really good to train on, which then led to the past weekend at Mount Sac. Unfortunately, because Tyler had jumped 55, they put him in the professional section at the meet, which is good for him, but like it separates us because I had only jumped 52, or I jumped 52, and like it's based off of like a mark when you get entered, and I was entered at 43. So I get put in the college A section, which is like, it's kind of dumb for me to complain. It's like I'm in the best college section when I feel like I should be in the pro section.
If a year ago I told you this,
yeah,
you would be stoked.
Oh yeah. And then luckily, like, because it's Mount Sac is down in like Walnut, California, and my family's from Southern California, they were able to come up, and I had a whole bunch of family there, and a lot of people hadn't watched me jump in a long time. And it was amazing, to have my dad there to help coach me again and all that stuff. And, the weather wasn't the best, and I wasn't feeling, super, 100% or on my game. But, like, I opened at 5:30 again there. And, I made that bar first attempt. And there was a bunch of really good guys in there. There was probably, like, 4 or 5 guys who had made 550 plus before. And I opened at 5:30. And I think, and a bunch of people were jumping. I think like 6 guys were jumping at, but there was like 16 guys in the whole competition, but only 6 were jumping at 5:30. Only one other guy made 5:30, and then the bar goes to 5:45. I'm not gonna jump at 5:45. What is that gonna do for me? Like, like I'm ready to jump higher than that. So I passed to 5:55, which is like 25 centimeters higher than what I opened at. And this guy, the guy who made it through was the guy who I ended up doing the interview with after it. He's a super great guy, and he actually beat me at the Texas Relays meet, and he's super consistent and stuff like that. And so we're like, I'm ready to jump high. I know this guy can jump 50 plus. He's done it before, like a couple weeks ago. I'm like, all right, let's do this. Let's get this guy up at 50 with me so it can continue to push me to jump even higher. And he makes 45 on his third attempt. But he third attempted his opening bar and third attempted 5:45, and I'm sitting there like, okay, kind of at an issue here because I didn't make 45 because I passed it, so I'm in second place. If I don't make this bar, I get second. There's no going back and jumping at 45. It's now or never. And if he makes 55, then I'll be ahead of him because I have less misses. But it's like, and then if he makes 65, then he could still beat me. So it's like the competition is still very alive and real, even though I've only been in it for one jump. Like I'm still fully in there. And so it's like, I come down at 55, and on my like first 2 attempts, they were close, but it was like not perfectly lined up and stuff like that. And then I come down to my third one, and I lined it up a little bit better, and I get over the bar, and I nip it a little bit with my chest, and it bounces a little bit. So the crowd kind of goes a little crazy because it's like, oh, that was a really close make. And then that puts me back in the first place position. Unfortunately, he didn't make the bar, but and then it was like I'm sitting there. I'm like, all right, well, I just won this meet, like.
And you PR'd.
and I PR'd, and now it's like, what's next? And so then we had to make the like tough decision. It's like, okay, do I jump at 65 or do I move to 72 again? Because once you win the meet, you can move the bar to whatever you want. Yeah. So I was like, okay, 65 or 72. And I'm like, okay, I'm still on a smaller pole. I think I could just like get a clean attempt over 65 on it and make it pretty easily on this pole. So I leave it at, I go to 65 and I'm like, okay, I'll take this like a small PR. That way I can progress poles for 72 or 75 or whatever. And I come down in the first jump and I just completely obliterate the pole. It's just way too small. I'm running faster. I'm feeling a lot better. And then we go to that next pole, which was the same pole I attempted 72 with the week before. And something special, kind of like a unique fact about this pole is this is the only pole that I have that's actually Brent's, which is Tyler's dad's old poles.
Which is a school record you're trying to beat.
School record holder's pole, whose school record I'm trying to beat. And that's the one pole that I've yet to line up a jump on. And I had a really close attempt at 65 where I had tons of height and I like brought my knees into it again. And I like tried to like leave it up there, but it was like really close attempt. And then like my third one, the wind kind of shifted. And so I kind of got stood up a little bit and didn't make it. But it was like, good attempts at 65. I was overall pretty happy with it. Obviously, I want more, but, going 2 meets in a row over 50 is like a lot of pro guys, like B tier pro guys dream about like that. Like that's what they live for. Like that's what they want to accomplish. And so I definitely think I'm in a really good spot now.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely impressive and it's incredible to see what you're doing in all aspects. I mean, definitely athletically and personally, but then what you mentioned previously about going to meets and especially with younger people that are like, well, I've seen you on Instagram and things like that. And even if people don't notice it as much, as you mentioned, you were at 1,000 and now you're at 2,000, that doesn't even matter anymore. Exactly. Because any impact is some impact. And it's just incredible to see. And I'm not surprised. I've seen it's funny how like some reels that you post will get like a couple thousand views and then another one gets 1 million and it's like all over the place.
It's so crazy with that. Like I still remember the first video I ever got to 1 million views was the video of me like fully eating it. And I posted that one and I was like, oh, this one's doing pretty good. And then it was a couple weeks later, it got 1 million views. I was like, what the heck? How did this got 1 million views? I'm like, dang it, that kind of sucks because like now I'm kind of more known for the guy who ate shit than the guy who pole vaulted high. But then luckily I had a video from the pole vault summit. I think that hit like a couple million views. Mm-hmm. And I was stoked with that. I was like, oh, it does good. Then that's all that matters. Like I'm getting outreach. I'm reaching people and sharing my story. And I get DMs all the time about people. It's like, after I jump high, it's like, wow, your story's super inspiring. Like, I've been following you since you were like in high school, and like I've always loved watching you jump, and it's so awesome to see you doing well again.
Yeah, no, and it's awesome to see that reflected in all aspects of your life. As we were talking about previously, like you tell this story, you look happy telling the story. I mean, I hadn't met you before this, right? But like I can just sense how happy you are with where you're at and like with the social media reflection, like that says something still. And I mean, not even to speak about your athletic performance recently and how much it's improved, but it's like a holistic sense of improvement rather than, oh, I'm doing better athletically and that's that. No, it's like a holistic approach to all of this, which is amazing to see. So congratulations on all of that. It's gonna get posted like later on, but for context, like we're still April 21st right now. So there's a lot of season left for you. And I'm sure there's some PRs in store hopefully, and I'm sure there will be. But for now, what's next for you?
The next meet will be the big meet. It's a duel versus Stanford, and it'll be a really good meet because I know Stanford's they're tapering for championship season, so they're slated to continue to do really well, and they train hard during the season. So, like they're a threat. You can't ignore that. Like you can't be like, okay, I beat them a couple other times. You can't ignore that because that they'll be there too, and they'll be on their A game. They have very consistent vaulters, and so me and Tyler we're really focused on this meet because it's a good opportunity, like really good competition because not only at every meet that me and Tyler go to, we always have each other to compete against. But now we have these two guys with the school rivalry, and like, you know, we want to win the big meet. We want to win the pole vault in the big meet. It's going to be a big meet, you know, literally for us, because it's like we want to win it and we want to jump high. And so, you know, it'll be that, and then followed by our conference meet, which will be my first outdoor conference meet. I've never been competitive at the conference level in college, but now me and Tyler are number 1 in the Pac-12 right now. And then I'll get to go to regionals. I've never qualified for regionals before, but hopefully at regionals I should be able to qualify for nationals. And because, you know, I've never been competitive at the national level, and now I think I'm 7th or something in the nation.
Wow.
And so I was like, hey man, like, you can't look at what you did last year. You can't look at what you did last time you were there, you know, at a certain meet. It's like, there's a bunch of home meets where I no-heighted. And I showed up my first home meet since I've no-heighted a bunch of times, and I jumped 552. Like, I knew that I couldn't let that get to me. I couldn't go, okay, well, I've never jumped high here before. Like before, me and Tyler talk this all the time, at Albuquerque Indoor, we used to hate that place. 'Cause I don't know if you've ever been to New Mexico. It's a pretty bad city. It's just, there's nothing around. It's dry. It's cold. It's just kind of a miserable place. And then, like, we jumped low so many times there that we're like, man, fuck this place. We hate this place. And then we come back our next year and we realize, oh my God, this facility is amazing to compete at. The runway is incredibly fast. You know, the people here are nice, and, you know, there's a grocery store nearby, so we're able to get the food that we want within walking distance. And then we kind of realized, like, wait a second, this is like the best place for us to jump. How come we didn't realize this before, you know? And sometimes we were caught up so much in our performance that we believe that it's like, you know, it's like, oh, just because I perform bad somewhere, it's like, it must mean it's a bad facility. And it's like, you know, you have opportunity to compete and jump high at any facility. It just comes down to who you are and how you approach it.
Yeah, and it's all about perspective too, whether you like it or not. That mindset shift does play a huge role.
Yeah.
And it just changes your approach to the entire performance. So super interesting story. I've never been to Albuquerque, from what you're saying, thankfully.
Yeah, it's where Breaking Bad is filmed.
Yeah.
So it's like all that desolate desert.
I know about it. I've never been.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, you're not missing out on much.
Yeah.
Like, I still remember, like, we landed in the airport there, and the airport's fully empty, and we're like, huh, it must not be busy. And I mean, I've landed and left from the airport probably like 8 times now, and I'm like, nope, it's always empty.
Yeah.
The only time it's full is when there's a track meet and everybody's leaving at the same time, and they're all in their track stuff. It's hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, it's that type of place. We've all competed in places where it's like there's nothing besides the sports activity going on here.
Yeah.
So yeah. Besides that, when you finish this year, is there a 5th year in store? Is it go on to the next stage? What's it looking like for you?
Yeah, I have a 5th year because of COVID, and I'm planning on staying here and returning here to compete with with Fercal and with my teammate. So like, yeah, it should be fun. Like, you know, a whole other year will be insane, you know, with what we did with this year, and we hope that we can continue to improve really well, and have a shot at, you know, 580. If we jump 582, that's Olympic A standard, and, you know, then we can go to trials and we can try for the Olympic team, and, you know, and then after that, you know, Tyler still has another year after that, so he'll probably continue to compete here, and then I'll probably try and train post-collegiately here.
I mean, that's just a ridiculous shift of events, right?
Yeah.
If I told you, even trials, the idea of trials a year ago, it's like, wow, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, because I would talk to my girlfriend about Olympic trials, because she's been to Olympic trials like twice, because, you know, swimming is completely different. Like, for swimming, there's like, you hit this cut and you get to go, and there's 2 waves of Olympic trials for swimming. And for pole vaulting, it's way different. If it's like, they take the top 12 world, or top 12, you know, national ranked, and the national ranking is based off of a result score and a performance score added together, and it's the average of your 5 best performance scores. And so it's like, you get a result score from jumping a certain mark, but then you also get bonus points from doing it at a big meet. And all the big meets, you know, they're in Europe, and they're like USATF championships and stuff like that. So it's like, it's really hard for an NCAA athlete to get into to get into that level, because you need to jump in either incredibly higher than other people, or you gotta go to other meets. And so like every meet is kind of categorized by like a certain level. So like Olympic final and World Championship, that's like the highest level meet, and you get like 350 bonus points for winning that meet. So and like my performance score for jumping like 555 was like 1143. So if you add on like 350 bonus points, that's a ton of points.
Yeah.
And like it's incredible, because this system is so complex, and it allows you to compare across multiple event groups, and it's like super unique too, because it's just performance based. And so like then it goes like Olympic finals, and it's like Diamond League meets, which is like the pros like series, and then it's like A, B, C, D, E, F, and basically every college meet is an F tier meet. You win that, you get 15 bonus points. That's it. And like Mount Sac, I think it was an E meet, so I got 25 bonus points for winning that meet. And so it's like it's a whole different ordeal, because like if somebody goes and jumps 535 at like a European championship or something like that, they get way a higher world ranking than me because of that.
525?
Yeah, because
Wow.
if they win that and they get like 100 bonus points, it's like what they were previously getting 1,043, now they're getting 1143. And so like that's why it's like big to go to Europe for track and field as well, and obviously just do well in the championship meets, and like try and qualify for USATFs, because USATF I think is a tier meet, and so you get a lot of bonus points from that as well.
That's crazy how, like you said, complex the system is, in the sense that you're jumping at the exact same height, but it depends on the meet that you're at.
And that really only matters at the professional level, but like obviously we like looking forward to that, so that way we know how we need to approach professionally pole vaulting, and where we need to go to meets, to get good marks, to get good bonus points on a good mark, and compete against really good people.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, and it's exciting. I know that there's gonna be again a plateau at a certain time, because it's not like you can expect to continue like multiplying your your PRs,
like,
right?
if I were to increase like the same amount that I've already increased, because I went from like 482 to like 555, which is like that's like 70 something centimeters.
Dude, you would be at the world record.
I would be tied with the world record, or 2 centimeters above it.
Yeah, and that's the point I'm trying to get to. It's not like I'm gonna sit here and say like, oh, well, keep it up, and next year you're gonna be at the world record. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah, you can't logically. There's no way I could even logically believe that. Like I believe that I will do incredibly well next year, but I know for a fact this is the season. This was the season of my lifetime.
So far.
In terms of like gross performance gain, but it's like, tell me if I break the world record, that's going to be the season of my lifetime. Later on, or if I qualify and I go to the Olympics, that's going to be the season of my lifetime. But it's like, by looking strictly at a performance level, it's like I will never increase performance that much ever again.
Yeah, no, and that's the point I'm trying to make. Like, you've had an incredible year right now, and I know there's great things ahead for sure, especially like with your mentality and everything going on. But yeah, I can't wish on you to say like, oh, and I hope you increase another 70 next season, or next year. It's just, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have a few questions to close out, and so we'll start off. After your entire story, your entire process, all your takeaways so far in your career, what's your definition of success?
Yeah, I'd say success was when I kind of like realized that I was really happy with what I was doing, and it didn't occur. It wasn't when I jumped 25. Like obviously, like you would expect, I would be extremely happy with that. Like, and like I was, but I think it was when I was sitting at the Pac-12 indoor meet. I'd made 543, and there was like no other care in the world. I was so ecstatic with how far I'd come in the sport, and like it had nothing to do with the performance. It was everything to do with my mentality and being able to compete at a high level again. I was like, this is success, to me.
In those moments where you were struggling and impatient and dealing with failure, I'm sure you obviously learned a lot as we talked about. For anybody that's going through any rough patch or failure, what advice would you give them?
Obviously, keep pushing, because great things lie around those corners, and it'll be worth it in the end. It definitely will. I would tell myself that back when it was hard. I was like, I know that if I can get through this, that I could jump incredibly high, and that things will be good, and I'll be able to be happy with competing again. I knew that in the moments where I wasn't happy with competing, I knew that there was a way where I could get back to it because I had felt it once before. And so having that hope is a huge thing, and a big thing that helped me a lot is leaning on those around me, leaning on my relationships with people, teammates, coaches, family, even my relationship with God and getting closer to Him was like a huge aspect that helped me perform even better as well.
So I didn't know that last part. Like, what role would you say your faith plays in there?
Yeah, it's a big role. I actually was raised non-religious, and so I didn't find God until like my second year of college, which I was raised similarly to a lot of religious people, traditional values and stuff like that, and it wasn't until like I had some serious doubt. I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like does anything really matter? I had some really existential issues, and it wasn't and my roommate at the time was religious, or is religious, and I had talked about stuff like that with him, and I gotten more interested in it, and it was really nice. My faith journey really began it was self-started, and I was able to slowly introduce myself into it, and kind of have a self-realization and grow with God in a new way, especially with Athletes in Action here at campus. That was a huge resource I relied on, and even still to this day, I've never even been to church, but it's I still I'm a big believer, and we host a Bible study at my house every week, and that aspect has helped so much because it brought a lot of like-minded people, because it's a track Bible study, together in a room, and we would talk about our issues, and we would work about ways to overcome them, and there was a big ideal that through God and with God that you can accomplish anything, and God will guide you there. And I fully believe that everything happened for a reason. I knew I was supposed to go to Cal. I was supposed to struggle, because in the end it will work out. And if it hasn't worked out, then you're probably not at the end yet.
Yeah. So how do you view that relationship there? I sense a lot of things, and definitely one is a motivating factor, I'm assuming, but another one, is it community with AIA or the Bible study that you have with the track team? What is it from that keeps you going? Is it finding meaning in life, or is it all three? What would you say?
It was a big factor that helped me move away from my self-worth being based on my performance. It really helped me get away from I am a pole vaulter, I am a student at Berkeley, and then it instead put it into I'm Skyler Magula. I'm who I am, and I'm great because I'm who I am. I don't need to do all these things to be great. God loves me, and I can be who I am and still be successful and a good person.
That's beautiful. Very nice. I'm happy that you were able to find that. Very last question. When all is said and done, what would you want to be remembered for?
Man, that is a big question.
Yeah.
I definitely would say I'd love to be remembered for kind of the motivational aspect of watching somebody do so poorly and for them to get back up and keep going. I love the impact that I've had on the sport that I've heard from other people have told me. And I think that would be the greatest thing to be known for, is as an amazing story that will motivate others to continue to succeed forever.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's honestly going to happen, even from somebody that's nerdy with social media me. At some point the account is going to pop off, whether it's from a result or from one video. It's a ticking bomb. It's going to go off at some point, and it's obvious from the outside, but now listening to your story and getting to know
yeah.
all of it, like, it's even more obvious. So, like, I genuinely think it's going to happen. It's the second time it's happened on the podcast that I say this, but you've genuinely earned a fan today. Like,
Thank you.
super inspiring story, and it's, something that's extremely admirable. Excited to follow along this season. Check it out next season as well. I'm going to be around for at least another 2 years, so
Oh, yeah. Sweet.
we'll see what happens. But I mean, it's been a pleasure. Like I told you at the very beginning, I just had a feeling. I'm like, I need to have a conversation with this guy, and I guess I was right. It was a great conversation, one I genuinely really, really, really enjoyed, and it was a blast.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Is there anything I missed? Anything else you'd like to touch on?
Not that I can think of.
Yeah.
I think we talked a lot, and we covered a lot of things.
We
so.
definitely did. I think this is going to be, for sure, the record so far.
Oh, really?
For the longest episode. No, that's, I mean, in my opinion, it's a good thing. Especially because I really enjoyed it. So, I guess that's it. Thank you once again, and hopefully in a year or so, we'll run it back.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. To everybody that watched on YouTube or listened on Spotify, thank you guys so much. If you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're on Spotify, please follow the podcast. That's it for today. I'll see you guys next time.
All right.
That's it, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was like a time machine.
Yeah.